sky is breaking. Keys ignite the storm we're facing. Steel and shadow, clash of fate. Time won't bend, we won't break. Legends call us fire inside. Bound together, we won't hide. Let's go! Starstrikers! Power Rangers! Blaze across the endless sky. Let's go! Starstrikers! Power Rangers! Burn the dark, the stars will rise. Let's go! Stand! Strike! Power ignites! Fight! Rise! Rangers unite! Let's go! Starstrikers! Power Rangers! Blaze across the endless sky. Let's go! Starstrikers!
Got any fives?
Tell me you love me in the comments.
You could say please, you know.
Hello and welcome to another Power Rangers and Chill. I do this occasionally. I have not forgotten about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth. Don't worry about that. The reason is that the AI technology has progressed so far that you can now make whole episodes if you're patient enough. And what I'm trying to do is put together the right amount of engines, the right combination rather, in order to put together a kind of okay Power Ranger episode. And so that's what I'm working on, and it's, it has its moments, as you can see here. You have my version of Trini and Billy discovering Animus in his stasis mode. As you know, when he was defeated by Master Org, he disappeared because he was super duper sad about that. And this is where he ended up in my story, is in the Hollow Earth, hiding, of course, after the defeat. He's found in his power down mode here by Billy and Trini, who don't reactivate him, by the way. They don't know who he is or what he does. There's just thousands of dead Zords around him. That's all they know. So, that being said, we'll move on over here, though, because I wanted to bring your guys' attention to just what I'm talking about. When I say that we're pretty close to being able to put an episode together, I'm not kidding you.
When will you learn, Green? I'm not your enemy. I'm not the one judging you.
And then for whatever reason, the Green Ranger is just shaking. Maybe he's got the shivers. I don't know. Some steam got up in his armor. I don't know. But anyway, we're very close.
When will you learn, Green? I'm not your enemy. I'm not the one judging you.
We're very close to being able to put together a kind of okay Power Ranger episode. As you saw in the opening, you can get pretty creative with how you represent these characters now, especially if you're smart with how you're using this stuff, rather than trying to be overly ambitious with it and ask it to do things that the AI is just flatly not capable of at the moment. Combat scenes are still hit or miss, of course, and occasionally you can get some pretty solid voice lines, but the AI actors are, of course, lifeless. It's kind of the point, they're AI. So again, I'll play this clip again.
When will you learn, Green? I'm not your enemy. I'm not the one judging you.
And so that's what I'm working on, is I'm trying to put together an episode of scenes that are, they feel like they're from a Power Rangers television show, even though they're not. That kind of thing. It's not so much out here to get sued, but moreover to tell a story that I know Hasbro, Disney, and Boom Studios just flatly aren't going to involve themselves with. As you know, or may not know, the Power Rangers adaptation of Gokaiger did not fare well when it came to the internal decision-making of Hasbro, Neo-Saban at the time as well. Neo-Saban was the one who had the control of it, because the Power Rangers have different rules than Super Sentai. If you're not familiar, in the Power Rangers rule book, the series guide, the Bible, you're not allowed to present the Rangers as criminals. This is what happened to Lupin Ranger versus Pato Ranger coming over here to be adapted into anything. I came up with calling it Victory Police versus Super Police, but it's one of those things where they're just not confident in the idea of, people outside the law doing things, even though that's kind of the core of Power Rangers to begin with. As such, Gokaiger fell into that because pirates are, pirates. They're not good, on the side of law and order. And so again, the Power Rangers branding tripped all over itself, trying to make sense of Power Rangers and a big old Jolly Roger right on their chests and forehead and over everything that they touch. And that was just a bridge too far for old Neo-Saban. And so what they decided to do was cram that into some not anniversary season. They tried very hard not to turn it into one, even though it was one. It was very difficult to negotiate the Gokaiger theme, of course, with pirates, and then avoid that at all costs. Just refuse to acknowledge that in any way, shape, or form. Gosei, their mentor character, the tiki face that was mounted to the wall in Megaforce, even he couldn't explain it. He said, "There's a good reason for that," and then the scene cuts away, and that's it. The thing is that as far as the censors go here in the United States, there wasn't going to be a problem with the pirate thing. It's just the Power Rangers' own internal reasoning, the branding reasons, made it impossible to bring this over because of, how they themselves choose to treat this franchise. And so that's why I feel confident in going around and doing Starstrikers, because I know Hasbro cannot touch this at all. Not only that, they sold off the suits associated with it, so they are absolutely in no way going to go back in time and review anything from a previous series. So that's why I'm pretty confident going out and doing these adaptions, these unlicensed adaptions, if you will. Toei's jumped out of the Super Sentai stuff, at least as far as an ongoing series goes. They may have movies and whatnot. And now Hasbro's trying to completely reboot from the ground up using Disney as their catalyst. So that's modern Disney, not the old kind that did kind of badass stuff every now and then. RPM was pretty badass. You got to admit, there aren't too many Power Ranger series that start off with the extinction of humanity. Okay? There aren't too many of them start off with the Terminator. The only thing it lacked was having Venjix stomp on a human skull out in the desert, It was the only thing it was lacking. But that's what you're facing, is that you're facing a brand in America that has committed itself entirely to 5 to 8-year-olds. And there aren't a lot of those left in the world at all, let alone here in the United States. And of those kids, most of them are marinated in Fortnite already, believe it or not. So those 5 to 8-year-olds are just not checking in on old Power Rangers. And I'm not sure Disney, the new Disney, is going to be able to defeat that. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is the Power Rangers Starstrikers. That's right. In the chat joining us right now, we have Austin McNeil saying, "Hey, C, how's it going with you, dog?" Well, you know what? I am kind of excited to be here to talk about this because it's been something I've been working on for a very, very long time. I forgot to bring it up. Whoops. Hold on just a second. Got to go dig up a clip here for you guys. We're going to watch some ancient YouTube, okay? This is stuff from way, way back when I was a wee message board user, okay? Now, I used to do these videos for a place known as Ranger Talk, okay? There was a message board called Ranger Talk. And what they like to put on that website was your fan fictions, all sorts of neat stuff like that. But I'm sorry, I'm just trying to dig it up. It takes a second. A little bit of brain power, but here we go. No, you can't go watch this. It is boy, it starts early. Anyway, this is hidden. It's set to private. You can't go watch this. So this is the example of what I was talking about. Is I've been working on this story since the beginning, since Gokaiger was first announced way back 12 years ago. This was when Gokaiger first came over here to the West, or at least news of it anyway. On Ranger Talk, we were tasked with what the adaptation of Gokaiger would be way back in the day, and that was our fan fiction assignment. We were given different prompts each week to try and foul up our fan fiction plans and to see how we could roll with those adjustments. And so this was my entry into that way back when. And you'll remember Ramona, by the way. You'll meet Ramona here. No, I wanted to do an all-lady team to be different than everybody else in the fan fiction competition. That's why you're seeing a whole team of ladies here. But I didn't stop there. There was a whole plot behind this thing, remember? So I created a trailer for the Legends. This is 12 years ago, by the way.
When I sacrifice my youth to defend what's ours.
When I say no to a law we never voted for.
So this is mostly just the Assassin's Creed 3 trailer, blah, 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 it's fine. But the thing was with this is that I was trying to evoke time-traveling space pirates. And wouldn't you know, all these years later, it finally came true. Okay, it finally came true. So the cast you saw before for Legends, not important. It's just an idea that I had 12 years ago during a fan fiction competition that has finally mutated into Power Rangers Starstrikers. And that's what we have here. As you can see, the whole team is present right here. What I'm most fond of is, of course, Nebula's End, Refreshments and Rift. I decided we were going to have like an asteroid-based bar, kind of like Blue Heaven from Outlaw Star, where like everybody's there. If you remember in Power Rangers SPD, Piggy had a like a alleyway bar truck. You know, he would sell things out of it and whatnot, food, drink, all that stuff, until it got blown up. But you'd see like past Ranger henchmen, you know, the villain henchmen hanging around the place. You know, they were either homeless or out of work or whatever. And over time, of course, you'd see this in Power Rangers in Space before SPD, of course. You'd see this in Power Rangers in Space, where some of the old monsters, the old villains from previous shows, were they were present at the saloon on Onyx, where Villamax came from. They were present at the League of Evil, Legion of Evil, just wherever everybody was having their big dinner when Andros showed up and messed up their table. But this is the idea is that there's this sort of big world of Power Rangers out there. And there's a lot to talk about inside of this that just seems like every new series is ignoring. Now, as we know, that's because of the Super Sentai footage, right? But also, Power Rangers has done its damnedest over the years to try and create like one through thread of story throughout all of this. And what's important about this is that series like the Power Rangers Starstrikers would be using a lot of that universe to its advantage, given how, as in Gokaiger, the Rangers are changing into various previous teams and teams that, of course, are forward from Gokaiger, obviously, because of how time works. And the big situation that this story is meant to wrap itself around is that the Rangers ended up losing a war. That's the key to why we have the Starstrikers, is that they're from a far-flung future where the Empyrean Dominion controls everything. And they have been thrust back in time from a rip in time. Now, it's not known if Zordon created that, the Morphin Grid created that, but it is a rift in time that brings these characters back to just after when the Dominion War was lost. Okay, now I know that that's from Star Trek or whatever, but it's just a convenient name. So it's not trademarked. But the Rangers end up, the Rangers of our time have lost this war. And so they've surrendered their powers, and that's where the keys come from. And that's how, in the far-flung future, Ramona and her crew have access to all of these Power Ranger powers. The way I found around all of this, when you have these Super Sentai characters, for instance, that aren't, you know, native to the universe, the way I found around this was to call them Rangers from other planets. We had this with the Aquatarian Rangers showing up with the Aka, no, not Aka, with the alien ranger suits with the ninja motif. And so that pretty much explained that Power Rangers from other planets would have different powers. Trey of Triforia ended up having inexplicably Zeo compatible powers. I don't think it was ever explained why his powers were compatible with Zeo's, but they just were. But and that's what you find in the Power Rangers universe, though, is that we have a very large cosmic community, if you will, to choose from. And so from all that space, all these different Rangers can come forward and fill in the gaps. So when we have like 5-Man or Jetman or even O-Ranger, you have the ability to attach with those, like, oh yes, this is for the Rangers from this part of the galaxy or this part of the galaxy, that kind of thing. You don't have to really worry about contextualizing them, their battle, whatever. They were all summoned to Earth in order to meet the Dominion and defeat them, but the opposite happened. So that's the setup for how these characters come into their powers. And so throughout the series, they encounter the old legends, if you will, the previous Power Rangers that no longer have their powers, but are doing their best to keep the Dominion from fully dominating the Earth in their time. They, of course, lose this contest in order for the Starstrikers to come to be, okay? You have to understand a lot of the negativity that you see what's going on with the Power Rangers community and things like that. A lot of that negativity ends up being fomented as the studios miss what people actually want. Now, I understand they're trying to attract kids to this and things like that, but look at Star Wars. Star Wars fell all over itself trying to create this new continuum, and it just didn't really work. Star Trek, again, trying to create this new continuum, fell all over itself. The Kelvin universe is a neat little thing, but it never gained its own true personality. It always felt like just another version of Star Trek. Same with all of the new products they've come out. Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Destiny, whatever is going on with Starfleet Academy, I have no clue, man. Like it's just crazy. The Klingons won't even eat things that died. It's vegan Klingons, okay? That's where you find yourself. And similarly, Power Rangers has been melted down into this thing that is barely distinguishable from any previous season. And this is ultimately the fate of Cosmic Fury that tried very desperately to create some sort of denouement for 30 years of the series and ended up, again, tripping all over itself rather than paying homage to where everything should be anchored, okay? It's very important. I'll jump back over here to the chat, see what's going on. I have Sakura Mita here saying, Cider, do you want to do another chill video next week? I manage to back on track with AI. Also is okay to post a link in the chat. I think YouTube auto filters those, so it's not going to work. But yeah, again, people want to see for a series that would involve bringing back the older Power Ranger suits, similar to Gokaiger. People want to see the heroes associated with those suits. But this, again, adds that neat twist where they don't have their powers to call upon, but the pirates do have those powers. So you have scenarios like this where we have, I believe this is Marcus. I'm sorry, I don't have their names memorized. You have, shoot me, I guess. But this is Marcus Vane, or Marcus Vane, if you like. He is the Blue Ranger, the Blue Star Striker, and he is, of course, beside Doggy Kruger, and they are clearing bad guys from presumably inside the Deca base. And so, again, you have these Power Rangers that are still trying to do what they do best out in the world, now with the complication of not being able to call on their powers. This creates a need for our pirate Power Rangers, the Star Strikers, without forcing them on the scene. This is what happened with Super Mega Force, is it just didn't make sense what was happening with them. Especially considering they saved the Legend War to the end. So it just didn't, they were just duplicate Morphin powers. Is that what the keys were? It was never explained. Neo-Saban had no idea what to do with this, and they just really wanted to pull the Band-Aid off. But then they went to Japan and refilmed all of these very strange references to Super Sentai for no apparent reason. The most bizarre decisions were made around this Gokaiger adaptation, and I'll never understand it, which is why I've dug in and tried to do this. I wouldn't say a lot of justice because it's Power Rangers. What are you going to do? But I've tried to make sure that this series has at least some footing in what people want to see. Okay? And that's why you have characters like Doggy Kruger returning without the ability to transform into the Shadow Ranger, but still fighting the good fight. Again, I think this is one of those more important things to underline of like, what is heroism? What's the point of heroism? You know, if you have to put on a piece of armor in order to be the hero, are you really a hero? Like that line from Avengers, take off the suit of armor, what's under there? You know, it's kind of thing. Take away the super soldier serum, what's under there? You know, what brought you to the fight? Was it the neat kung fu and giant robot, or do you actually care about the future? That kind of. And then, of course, as you saw in the intro, I like the bringing back the galaxy gliders. So I figured that old technology that the the space heroes were getting around in probably wouldn't hurt to have around. So you have here Soria. She is the Pink Ranger, and so she's riding around on the pink galaxy glider through a wormhole in this scene or whatever you want to call it. But again, I thought it would be good to bring back this stuff because you remember this stuff. You remember it's all out there. It's still functioning. It's not like the Power Rangers have found a better way to get through space. So, of course, you have the Galaxy Glider that allows Soria to go wherever she needs to go. And, of course, why did I forget this already? How did I already forgot the name of it. I'm sorry. I wasn't a big Lost Galaxy fan. Not that I hated it. It just I wasn't able to catch it on television because I didn't live where it was, a thing. I forget what these are called. Star Cruisers. I'm not sure what they're called. You have to let me know in the chat if you remember what these are called. But you have the Vesper Cross, and she is, of course, piloting this across space and time through the wormhole. And again, I wanted to bring back these things that had a special place in the hearts of Rangers. These were toys for a lot of kids, and so it would mean a lot to see new Rangers riding around in this old tech and that sort of thing. Honestly, I don't think it would have killed Neo-Saban to go out there and just rebuild these things. They don't take that long to put together anymore, especially considering that a lot of this can be 3D printed now. And even back then, when this was being done, a lot of this kind of stuff can be just sort of AutoCAD now. It doesn't require a lot of sculpting. So, and as you can see, the AI just decided to have her wiggle around that joystick to make it look like she was doing something, even though doing that movement in the middle of a wormhole would probably get you killed. But like I said, the AI is approaching a place where you can create not a fantastic Power Rangers episode, but a pretty close to competent one. Pretty close. And as we go through the story, of course, you end up meeting the villains and whatnot that were all present before. But I wanted to throw in a twist on this. Okay, I wanted to make sure that we were creating a bit of an inroad into the universe I was talking about. And what better way to do that than with Drakkon, okay? Now, of course, I created my own Drakkon. This is not the Drakkon that you know. This is not Jason David Frank underneath that helmet. I don't make dead men dance, so if you're expecting that helmet to come off and to see Jason David Frank's face underneath that helmet, I have very bad news for you. That is not the case. I don't believe it's right to resurrect actors. That's why, again, when you look over here at what was going on with Doggy Kruger and Marcus, that's just Doggy Kruger. That's not the actor that portrayed him underneath that costume. I was very careful to choose the characters here in order to make sure that I wasn't AIing a living or dead actor into this presentation. And it's not because I don't respect them or anything like that. That's not the case. The reality is that ethically, I don't like the idea of stealing somebody's face. Excuse me. I don't like stealing somebody's face. I think that it's wrong to go out there and like bring back John Wayne or, like having Charlie Kirk speak at his own funeral is just, I don't know, it's very bizarre, or at church services and things. It's very bizarre. Not something I would have ever have allowed to happen, honestly. It's very disgusting in my opinion. But that's what I wanted to let you know about the Drakkon in this series. He is not JDF underneath there. We'll get into who he is in just a few minutes, though. What I want to explain about this whole situation, though, is that for Ramona, who is our Red Ranger, she is in this position due to a very bad situation she found herself in as a young lady. Her parents were doctors, on Onyx. And when Onyx was overrun by the Dominion, her parents were wiped out. It cost her right eye in the escape, and there is a burn mark on her back that looks like a black eagle. And so she changed her name to Ramona Black Eagle from her original name, and later on found the Aquila Corsair, and that's the Gokai Galleon. I like the idea of naming it after a phoenix. It's not really, important. It doesn't do anything phoenix-like. It just sounded romantic. So, but the Corsair again is the Gokai Galleon, and that was her ship. And slowly, the other Rangers are drawn to her as they continue to meet her on her adventures to collect the keys that are scattered across her timeline. So the first part of the series takes place in a far, far flung future, even beyond Time Force. And so they're collecting the Ranger keys. Then the rift opens and they go back in time to just after the Rangers' defeat at the hands of the Imperial Dominion in our time. Not out here in the real world, but like in our time. Intermingled with all of that, of course, is Drakkon's conquest of his universe, which is separate from this. All this time skipping, though, the Dominion traveling through time, Ramona's team traveling through time, of course, Time Force having to react to all that, traveling through time, has triggered Drakkon's reaction to all of it. And so he's entered this universe in order to continue his domination. This is my excuse to get Drakkon into this universe, as he is looking at this like was unaware of the multiverse. Let's put it that way. This guy was unaware that there is a multiverse out there, this version. And so what ends up happening is that he's sort of like a Sephiroth character as he's entering the universe. There are pockets of him that will bleed through into their timeline and attack Ramona or attack the other Rangers. And this is what you're seeing here. You see this, of course, in the intro is reversed where he's reaching through the glass, because I like the idea of like a reflection becoming tangible and, reaching out and getting you. And that's what happens to Ramona, is much like Cloud in Final Fantasy VII is having hallucinogenics are a drug, having hallucinations of Sephiroth confronting him, taunting him, talking to him. This is what happens to Ramona as Drakkon is attempting to enter her timeline. And that is, of course, first it sounds like a bit of a unsettling horror situation where like a reflection can reach out and grab you and that sort of thing. But that's what's happening with this, is that the way that he enters the universe is more spiritual than physical at first. Like the spirit of Drakkon has infected this timeline and it's attacking these Rangers. Then the actual physical manifestation of him arrives. And if you're wondering what ends up happening with him, which, some of you might be, but we do have another message here in the chat. Sakura Mita says, I prefer more pirate vibes. That Sky Glider from Treasure Planet is a much better option. I prefer anthology than connected. Well, that's just it, as I wanted to make sure that it's connected. I realized you could probably make all these brand new vehicles and things like that, but really the purpose of Gokaiger was to call back to the previous 35 years. And so I figured it would be smart for the adaptation of Gokaiger to do that as well, as opposed to be some standalone thing that for whatever reason is able to draw back on the previous and, of course, successor Power Ranger teams. But we'll jump back over here. If you're wondering what it looks like, in Drakkon's setting, this is Drakkon Full Burn is the name I've given this armor. The Full Burn armor is after Drakkon absorbs the Morphin Grid energy, the Morphex energy from the Beast Morpher setting. And this allows him to hyper evolve his armor and power set to be able to take them on. And of course, Tyler is summarily defeated here in the, oh boy, I think it's the Nexus is what this is called. The Digital Nexus, Virtual Nexus. Anyway, this is where the Beast Morphers Rangers ended up confronting their villain pretty frequently. And so I thought it would be a good place to show Drakkon defeating their Red Ranger. But Hibiki Gamer's here, and he says, there's a lot of crop stuff in my state. Yep, there's a lot of stuff going on in Virginia, you bet. There's a lot of that happening, you bet. But again, like what she's looking at here is just the representation of that. And I went on to evolve this a little bit more so that we had something to look at while we're talking about this. So, the Morphex energy tends to behave not so much like a flame. So I figured his malevolent control of it would result in this. And this is the power boost that he needed in order to cross dimensions. And so rather than, entering Ramona's dimension looking like this, he enters in his samurai form. And this is one of those like final form power up things you can pull out. The reason why he doesn't walk around like this, in my opinion, is because Tommy is still in there. The honorable guy is still in there. And so he doesn't walk around in like kill mode because he's not always in kill mode. This has been the trick about this Drakkon, is that he's still the hero in his mind. I took inspiration from Tony Stark in Age of Ultron. A paranoid hero goes way too far in the attempt to create and sustain peace in a world that can't have that sustained peace, because that's just not how it works. And so the chaos and destruction in his world resulted in him obtaining this power in order to keep everybody safe. I'll give you spoilers. Why not? It's going to take a while to get this out. I still got to do Hollow Earth first. It's not like anybody's going to be spreading this one around. But this Drakkon comes from a universe where his Kimberly was killed. And she was killed by Time Force in an accident. But he doesn't know about that accident. He only knows that she was killed by Time Force. And so in an effort to keep everybody else safe, he took on the heart of the Green Ranger. Now, that sounds a little weird, right? Wasn't Tommy already the Green Ranger? He's sporting the White Ranger stuff here. What's going on with this? Well, he's not your Green Ranger. He's not your Tommy. He's my Tommy. He's the one I created for the Mighty Morphin Season X, Mighty Morphin Hollow Earth, okay? And so in his setting, his Kimberly is killed by Time Force. And this is why the Mighty Morphin Season X Rangers aren't able to help in the Zeo chapter that's coming up next, is because they're traveling across time fighting this guy. I don't know, it just looks badass. I just really like how cool that looks. And again, like this mark across his face was caused by the Wild Force Rangers when he defeated them. That was their savage strike. That was the best it could do to him, was scar his face. But just like the normal Drakkon, he's going around stacking powers and whatnot. And this armor is a result of his interaction with the Morphex energy when he absorbs the Morphex energy into himself. Of course, the absorption of that causes the collapse of the Beast Morphers universe. And on he went. And so I think this works a lot better, in my opinion, than the original Shattered Grid story where Tommy just stayed evil. He was like, yeah, screw it, I'll just be an evil guy. That one irked me. I mean, again, Shattered Grid is a great story. I really enjoy it. I think it's probably the best of the Boom stories, like, ever. Honestly, I don't think Boom has ever topped that. You have your feelings about Prime. I have my feelings about other things, but I really do believe that this series, Shattered Grid, was the pinnacle of Power Ranger comics. I don't think they're going to get much better than that. And so I drew inspiration, of course, off of that. But the big thing that irked me was like the igniting event was him just deciding to stay evil. And that was annoying. So I figured this one would be heartbroken and not wanting to see anyone else suffer. And so he's decided to put a lid on the world, a lid on evil. And this has driven him to the extremes of becoming Lord Drakkon. And I think I'm going to go with like his defining quote will be, if suffering teaches nothing, maybe ending it will. And so I think that's the angle I'll go with him going forward. Of course, this obviously shapes the end of Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth. So spoilers, if you wanted to know what happened at the end of that, some real bad stuff happens. And of course, in the Power Rangers universe, you don't see heroes die very often. And I think it's important that it's noted that the character that dies is a woman. There's a lot of people get agitated about that women are the igniting factor. And in this case, it is the reason why I chose that was because he very much loves her and very much cares for Kimberly. And so her death at the hands of who he, doesn't know. He doesn't know Time Force. They are not a known entity in the time that he comes from. These are just futuristic Power Rangers that caused the death of his, true love. And so he's acting this way, trying to protect everybody because he doesn't know when they'll come back and do it again. And this leads him to be the multiversal threat that he is, because as he continues to discover more universes, he sees more threats, and it just stacks up on the paranoia. Now, unlike the Drakkon of the past, this guy will get reset. He'll have his timeline reset, and he'll be restored back to a good guy, and all the bad stuff will be cleared up. But in the meantime, he's going to be one hell of a terror to deal with. Okay? And I don't know, I'm just really excited to see this guy go. So, but that's what's been going on with Hollow Earth, is I have been trying to figure out how to land this bird. It's a pretty big deal to manifest all of that and then come up with a decent ending to try and make sense of it all. One of the things that's plagued me about the end of it is the final combat scene. Because while you can do a lot of neat stuff with the stills, like I said, the combat with the AI is still very screwy. So getting it to move and show combat is not great right now. It might improve in a little bit, but for the time being, the AI just isn't really sure how to handle combat. I mean, of course, you could have it trace movements, but that's another ethics thing that I have a problem with. For instance, you could take a character like this, feed this into the you could feed this into the AI as just a picture, and then pair it up with footage from a previous Power Ranger fight where two guys are really, like the fight between Zanaku and Merrick. And you could reskin that, but it's the original fight is still Zanaku versus Merrick. Those are two actors that did a very good job with their choreography and things like that in order to make sure it was a believable fight. I don't want to do that. I don't want to copy that over into a new fight scene. I think that's wrong. I think it violates the ethics. So until the AI is good at doing the fight scenes, I'm going to be pretty careful with them. You probably only see so many decisive blows as opposed to like full on, crouching tiger, hidden dragon stuff. Because again, as I said, the AI still isn't there to quite understand that sort of thing. You saw a bit of it in the opening where you see the Green Ranger punching the, I call them X heads because they have X's on them. Anyway, so he's punching that, and that's pretty much as close as you can kind of get right now. It'll do like sword slashes and things like that, but getting it to connect and create damage as a result of that connection is still pretty hard because the AI is very sensitive to violence. And so it's very difficult to get it to generate things that even look believable, let alone have like the proper amount of speed and force behind them. It's sort of like if you tell the AI to punch a character, the punch will be like in slow motion. And then when they punch them, there'll be like a delay and then jelly will come out of them or whatever. And it just doesn't, it looks really off. It's very painful to try and sit through, I guess. But that's what's hanging up the Hollow Earth story. So what the main goal of that is, though, is to get everything started on this. Because again, this is what I said at the beginning about this is a very long project. Season X is meant to inspire a retooling of the entire franchise. We start with Mighty Morphin, Zeo, Turbo, all on the way up, and we iron out the problems in the continuum. Sort of like how the Rangers were passing on powers. That doesn't happen here. When the Mighty Morphins are done with their adventure, they don't move on and become Zeo. No, there's a whole new team that involves Rocky and Adam and Kat, and they're completely separate. They don't have any overlap with the Mighty Morphins aside from, everybody being Power Rangers. And I think they're 2 towns down from Angel Grove. I want to say that's where Rocky came from, as he was a basketball player, right? In another town, and he moved to Angel Grove. But yeah, anyway, that's where Zeo will be taking place. And of course, Turbo takes place in yet another town lower. And of course, TJ will be the leader there. Carlos will be there. Cassie. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with Justin. we'll have to worry about Justin when we get there. I guess we'll have to worry about that when we get there. But Zeo, of course, Turbo, In Space. I've already introduced Andros and Zane in this equation, and they might be the only In Space Rangers. I haven't quite decided if they're going to have a team with them or not, or if it's just going to be sort of like a cop show about two guys. One's the hard cop, the other one's the friendly cop, good cop, bad cop kind of thing. So you might see that with that story going forward. But it does take a while to do this because, again, I'm trying to craft the story and then try to make the scenes line up with a believable, amount of AI in there. So that way I'm bridging the gap between what's being told to you and what you're seeing on screen. I'd like to stop having to do these narrations in between all of it because I think it just disrupts the flow of the story to just have some neat AI stuff happening and then somebody's talking to you. There's a freeze frame and somebody's talking to you. I think it just kind of it steals the flow away. So I'd like to be able to put like a full-throated episode together of Mighty Morphin Hollow Earth. And of course, as I demonstrated here at the end with Starstrikers, where did I put that? Where did I put you? Somewhere. I put that. Where did it go? Sorry, I didn't bring it up before I got. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Put that over here.
Any fives?
But as you can see, I did that with this here. So,
Got any fives?
and you can see they're sitting in this room, they're existing in here, and I didn't put it all together for some reason. So I don't know why it worked like that. Where did I put that? There it is. There's the full one. My apologies, guys.
Got any fives?
Tell me you love me in the comments.
You could say please,
And so again, you're working with the Tengu, right? The Tengu warriors here, and you can have the Birdmen talking and things like that in the bar. They're just playing cards and stuff, sort of like how you saw them again, and In Space and Lost Galaxy, where they were just hanging out doing things. SPD again, you saw them like wandering around, being out of work, that sort of stuff. So I honestly think that there's a way to do this. You can be creative with it. You have to be careful with the combat scenes, as I was saying, but you can be creative with this kind of stuff and have the characters behave in certain ways and have them, moving around, existing in this universe. I'd like to have the waiters, the wait staff of Nebula's End be like the robots from the various seasons. Like you've got the different ones. You've got the Cogs. You've got the Quantrons, and the various other robotic villains over the years that have just, escaped my memory all of a sudden. I'm live, so my brain just goes to mush, I guess. As soon as you hit the live button, it's just anyway. So you can have the robot ones being the wait staff, and again, it just kind of represents, the comedy of it like that. Like robots are out of work. Well, maybe they like buying skins on Fortnite. Maybe they're gacha game players and they need money for their gacha games. Not like they have to eat, but maybe they like gacha games. I want to have one of them walking around with a t-shirt that says I Heart AG, Angel Grove. I Heart Angel Grove. Because again, it's that kind of little tangible stuff that makes sure that like the adults in the room can enjoy it and the kids still feel involved because it's a new environment. The new characters are doing things. They're not trying to get you to remember who these characters are. You either visually recognize them or as a little kid, you're like, oh, those are funny aliens and funny robots. And that one's wearing a funny t-shirt about Angel Grove. My dad thought that was funny. That kind of thing. It's those tiny little tangible things that matter in this series that made it important, made it set apart from Super Sentai. Not that Super Sentai didn't have those, but largely the Super Sentai series have been divorced from each other. Apart from the crossover movies, these characters did not exist in the same universe as one another. And as soon as those crossover movies were over, they went back to their original canons and didn't, coexist again until they were called upon for another movie or another anniversary series. Gokaiger was really the first one to sit down and try to explain this, I guess, to bring everybody together and rationalize why they were all not talking to each other. Zenkaiger, of course, showed up as the 45th anniversary that explained that they're all different universes. They're all separate universes. And now Gozuger has shown up and explained that all the previous teams did exist, but because of Tega June and Tega Sword rewriting so many universes, the Rangers just slowly disappeared, I guess. I think that's how that worked, is that the AI overwrote the Rangers. I think that's how I understood it. But the situation with this is that, as I explained, Hasbro, Neo-Saban couldn't negotiate Gokaiger, and similarly, they couldn't negotiate Zenkaiger or any of the other series that made reference of previous Super Sentai series, mostly for Gokaiger's case, due to the fact that it was pirate-based. Because as I said at the top of the show, they had very strict rules about how they could portray this stuff. Just how it goes, I guess. So we do have a member of the channel, Black Pill Timon, saying, "Hey, Cider, welcome aboard, friend. Welcome aboard." We have Conrado Javier here saying, "Saban ditched the pirate gimmick. We got Mighty Morphin at home as Super Mega Force." Yeah, that's been the big problem. As I explained with a lot of this, is that the daring nature of Power Ranger adaptations is just gone now. It's just gone are the days of when we could get things like In Space and Lost Galaxy. Time Force was really a copy paste of Time Ranger, but Lightspeed Rescue did its own thing, even though being still pretty close to Go-Go 5, it was still pretty unique in how it treated demons. And it's just gone, that Saban golden era where they were just really having a lot of fun trying to translate the footage from Japan over into a new story that held a little more water for American audiences at the time than I would say the overzealous nature of Super Sentai at the time. As you know, Super Sentai is a degree more violent and more confrontational than Power Rangers usually is. The Power Rangers are quite reactionary, whereas some Super Sentai teams got proactive. I'll remind you, in Car Ranger, they kill a baby. Yeah. So that you're not going to see that on American television, that's for sure. You're not going to see that. You have Black Pill Timon saying, "Tokusatsu in general has become gimmicky and too silly." I want to agree with it. It just seems to be the desperation to sell toys. Honestly, I want to believe that Kamen Rider is doing okay with Zets, but every now and then I tune in and I'm reminded, like, oh yeah, this is made for 10-year-olds now. It's melted itself down. I guess we could get more Garo, I guess, if somebody was daring and decided to make like a Buffy style Garo where he had a group of assistants and he was going out and creating, battling the created foes that he has to deal with. But it is what it is, right? You're probably not gonna see that, because what they're fighting against a shrinking population. And a lot of people, of course, aren't like, you know what, I want to get in line to watch a live show of Super Sentai over there. So, it went the way of the dodo. I don't know that Gavan Infinity is going to fill that gap, but for now, Kamen Rider's holding on. But the failure of Gavan Infinity, if it happens, it could end up hurting Kamen Rider's efforts over there too. So Conrado says Gosei is Diet Zordon and Tensho is Alpha 5 at home, not Beta 5. Well, you have to understand, Neo-Saban flatly had no idea what to do with the concept they were trying to execute. Somebody there decided it would be a good idea to bring together Gokaiger and Goseiger. And for the life of me, I have no clue why they decided to do that. I honestly think it's pretty stupid to melt two things together, footage-wise especially, that have no business being together. But honestly, it had to do with the fact that they wanted to have an soft anniversary series, but they didn't want to have to deal with the pirate thing. And that's been like the most, I think it's been like the greatest mistake of Neo-Saban in their entire run. Now, I know a lot of people have a lot of complaints about Ninja Steel, and Samurai, of course, was just painful to get through. But I really think this whole franchise fell apart around the Ghost Sager adaptation, Super Mega Force, because it was on display how weak the writing is, and not only that, how weak the showrunners were in that they wouldn't fight with the brand in order to recast that pirate symbol as a symbol of rebellion. Because as you've seen, One Piece, right? One Piece is now a symbol of rebellion around the world. Okay? You'll see this, the symbol of rebellion is the straw hat flag. And you'll see this waving above the heads of young people as they are sieging their government buildings. You saw this in Mexico, Indonesia. Where was the last youth revolution? There's another one going on somewhere out in the world. And I'm very sorry if it's your country or you're listening to this and you're offended that I didn't list off the proper countries. I apologize. It's not that I don't care. It's that I just flatly try not to care about other people's countries' revolutions. I'm sorry. I feel very terribly for those people, but I can't help them, and losing sleep over that is not going to help me. So, very sorry. I don't expect them to care if anything went over here. Believe me, they can't come help, so I don't expect them to care. But what I'm trying to get through is that they could have reclassified that Jolly Roger, the cross swords and the robo skull, I guess, that's on their helmets, on their chest, on their weapons, the flag that appears behind them. Whoops, clicked that wrong. Again, they could have reclassified that as a symbol of rebellion. All it takes is one line of dialogue while they're holding up the flag, and a character says, aha, it's a symbol of rebellion. And everybody looks at each other and goes, yeah, that's what it is. And that's it. And you're done. For the rest of the show, it's a symbol of rebellion now. It's not a symbol of piracy. It's not a symbol of theft. It's not a symbol of killing people to get their objects, as the pirates were more famously known for. Over in Japan, they have this ability to separate fact from fiction. It's fascinating, really. I think we should try it over here sometime, where you can watch something on television and not immediately try to tie it to a real world thing. It's pretty crazy how they could just, Japanese just watch something and not get pissed off because it didn't or did reference something in real life. It's fascinating how they can just do that. Meanwhile, over here, you can't even put together a Coke ad without somebody trying to take your head off for it. So it just is what it is, right? But Power Rangers suffered from this, like I said before, because as Simon Bennett explained in his interview with Keza Henshin, there around Lupin Ranger versus Pato Ranger, they had no idea how to deal with that, because on one end, the brand says that Power Rangers can't be portrayed as criminals. All right. And then on the other side of that, at the time, Simon felt that portraying police in a positive light would be bad because he's a psychopath. In no world is it ever like, oh yeah, people are doing things that are controversial, so I'm just going to make sure that my television show for children immediately takes the temperature of this moment and doesn't apply any type of future thinking to it whatsoever. The police will never be good people, so we can't show them in a positive light on a children's show because they'll never be good people. This week they're bad, so we shouldn't make a show. It'll be forever, guys. They'll never. It's all this terrible thinking that because of what happened, I believe in 2020, I think that's when this was going down, because of what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd and Officer Chauvin, they ended up with a situation where people around the world were like, oh my gosh, police bad. I don't know why. I don't know how that happened. That was just astonishing. You had BLM riots in Germany. It's like, are you guys bored or something? What are you doing? Trying to internalize and take on what happened in Minnesota, of all places. There again, Simon reacted to this. And of course, Hasbro at the time was, finicky about everything. And so he decided, oh no, we better not. And so they strayed off of that and skipped all the way up to Rhea Soldier, to their detriment, in my opinion, because there again, they just didn't know what they were doing and wasted a lot of money. But that's why they didn't go with Gokaiger, and why Neo-Saban was having such a hard time with it, and why Hasbro hasn't revisited it or even brought up anything associated with Gokaiger, has cut out the parts where the Gokaiger team has shown up in any type of previous footage that they're using, has made an absolute effort to just ignore that any of that happened, in fact, because they can't bring themselves to tell a story about good pirates. Of all the things, you wouldn't want a Power Ranger to go through a redemption arc. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't want to teach children you can go from bad decision to good decision. You don't want that. You don't want them to realize it's a redemption possible. Oh, I stole $1 from my mother's purse to play an arcade game. I'm doomed forever, rather than showing them that, yes, you can go from being a thief, you can go from being a bad guy to being a good guy. And pirates are an excellent vehicle to do that through. But nope. It's too difficult. It's too difficult for old Neo-Saban. Too difficult for him. Timon says, when Power Rangers Sentai went to space, they could have spin off into a new genre within Sentai and PR. They were trying to do this. Power Rangers Hexagon was meant to follow Wild Force, I think, before Disney took over and bought the rights off of Saban. I think Hexagon was supposed to show up after Wild Force. I could be wrong. It may have been after Time Force that it was supposed to show up. I'm not sure. But I want to say it was Wild Force. And what Hexagon was it was an entirely American production. The plan that Saban Brands had at the time was that the past Rangers would be gathering together to create what would be a Ranger Academy, while also going about their business of patrolling the universe, dealing with villains new and old, that sort of thing. So it had this sort of feeling of the torch was being passed to a new group of people while the originals were still going out and taking care of business while the new guys learned how to do it. I want to say that they were going to have Alex and Andros and Ryan from or Carter. It was Ryan or Carter. They were like the three heads of it. I want to say that's what was going on with that. Because they were like from the most military styled seasons, and this was going to be like heavy space police kind of stuff. They were trying to lean into it with Hexagon. It may have worked, but instead Disney bought it up and decided to adapt Hurricaneger into Power Rangers Ninja Storm. And I'm glad they did. The Power Rangers of the Disney era, the old Disney, was badass and awesome, despite finding out what was going on in the background with Disney trying to kill it every left and right. I really think that Disney did the most for the brand. Even most of the Saban series did not reach as far as the Disney series did. SPD alone it's astonishing that they got that approved for Y7. There's so much context there that is completely out of place for a children's show. RPM, as I said, starts off with the freaking Terminator. Humanity has been wiped out. All of humanity can fit inside of Corinth. One city, one domed city at that. It's not some gigantic place like New York. It's a domed city that might be 2, 3, 4, 5 miles across. That's all of humanity fits in there now. Okay, that's how they started it off. They started that off with the Yellow Ranger's butler getting killed. That guy gets one-shotted. He gets killed. You got the Blue Ranger almost losing his own father. His father's a drunk, by the way, in RPM. It's close. It's subtle, but you could tell he's a drunk. He's washed up, that kind of thing. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Then you have literally the Red Ranger's brother dying on screen, sacrificing his life on screen. Okay, and it leaves the father in like a PTSD situation where he doesn't want to send his last remaining son to die against an overwhelming machine empire. RPM was also when we found out that they forcibly put cybernetics inside of Dustin and his sister, Dylan and his sister, Tanaya. And Tanaya, we heard like her screaming and the machines going as she was like forcibly given sight by the machines. Like she was blind when she was a little girl and they like inserted stuff into her face and whatnot like that. RPM was really, really, really trying to push the brand into the 8 to 14-year-old market, like closer to G.I. Joe than Barney. All right. Whereas the Power Rangers we get today really leans into that Barney end because they're like, kids are stupid. We got to make things super stupid for them. I could go on about this all day long. It really just drives me up the wall. I wish Netflix had an Americanized Garo. No, you don't. You really don't. You don't want that. I promise you, you don't want that. It sounds like a good idea, but you really don't want that. Sagittarius Saya says they haven't talked about Masked Rider for years since Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. The problem is that a lot of the adaptation companies that are in charge of adapting the Kamen Rider series are again too afraid to take it to the limit that it belongs. I regularly have to remind people about this, is that in Japan, they have a much higher threshold for mature storytelling than we do. Our 8 to 5-year-old market is not going to tolerate people being called bastards. It's not going to tolerate robot babies being killed. It's not going to tolerate a lot of the stuff that happens in Super Sentai that is, I would say, a mature type of violence. And again, it's not often. Super Sentai is not littered with this, but there's quite a bit of it over the years. There's quite a bit of it, of violence that the moms of America are not going to tolerate. Similarly, Kamen Rider is a casualty of that. Originally, when Hayam Saban brought it over, they just didn't know how to translate Kamen Rider Black RX. They flatly just could not tell the story. He was an alien from another world, and it was kooky, and it was funny that he didn't understand what was going on, and blah, 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 blah. And he had Furbus, who may or may not have been the impetus for Furbies. But we had Furbus. That was a horrible idea, and whoever came up with it should be thrown off a bridge. But the whole thing was just a complete mismatch for what you were trying to do, because the show would go from this happy-go-lucky kid that was like chewing on milk cartons because he didn't understand the difference between eating and drinking because aliens or whatever. And then just to hyper violence, just straight up to that guy punching a dude until he's bleeding. And it just it did not match up whatsoever. I think what would have benefited that better is if they had committed to that and decided it was going to be a late in the afternoon Saturday morning program, or a program that they tried to pitch to adults and had an adult character in that role that was going through that experience, maybe not so comedically and maybe not without a Furbus. Because the level of violence in Kamen Rider RX, Black RX, and so on and so forth, the level of violence in those shows is really, it's closer to Buffy than it is even G.I. Joe. The level of violence that you see in Kamen Rider characters are dying a lot. Of course, they're bleeding a lot. The Kamen Rider doesn't usually lean into giant robots to finish off a giant monster. And a lot of the time, the monsters are not just there to disrupt people's ability to do homework. The robots are there instead to kill people. Excuse me, the villains, rather, are there to just kill people. They're not there to, like vex people on the way to the park or something. A lot of the time, the Kamen Rider villains are purpose-built for murder. And that's usually their introductory or the igniting event is mass murder or a murder of someone very precious to them. Kamen Rider Black starts right off with 2 children being medically experimented on. Like, there's just no way to bring that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Time Force does open up with eugenics, but it's a good thing. And here's why. Go back and watch it, that first episode or whenever. I think it's the first episode. They explain that in the year 3000, all the babies are perfect. How do you think they get there? They're showing the babies on factory assembly lines. How do you think they get that? That's right. They're genetically engineering people in the future. Eugenics to its nth degree. And they're the good guys. They didn't even really learn that lesson at the end that they shouldn't do eugenics. They just learned that throwing out the people that didn't come out fully cooked like Rancic wasn't a good idea because they'll rise up and lead a rebellion. So maybe you ought to be nice to them every now and then. That's all they learned. They did not learn that their eugenics was wrong. They just learned that they shouldn't banish people who came out of the easy bake a little bubbly. Hayam Saban is in his memberberry phase right after he bought the rights back from Disney. Yeah, it's another one of those like Disney lost at a poker game or something. I don't know. It was a very bizarre circumstance where Hayam Saban came back into ownership of it. But The issue is that for a very long time, Bandai kept releasing Mighty Morphin merch because Mighty Morphin was so big here that they just kept wanting to cash in on all those fans that wanted to relive 1993. And the trouble is you can't do that. You cannot do that. The reason why Sentai made it 50 years is because they boxed up the past and they said, that's over here. The new thing is over here and it's doing something new. It was only during anniversary seasons, and even then, for Gokaiger, it was pretty loose. But it was only during anniversary seasons and crossover movies that the Super Sentai heroes would even know about each other or reference each other. Most of the time, they were totally isolated, and that worked to Super Sentai's advantage because they weren't dealing with the baggage of all these previous seasons or the attempt to recapture that kind of energy, despite all the dinosaur series. But again, Neo-Saban wanted to capitalize on those toy sales. So when Power Rangers Samurai came along, it had to have a Mighty Morphin theme song. And that really killed it. That really killed it. Again, maybe someday in the far-flung future, when I'm 70 or 80, I'll get a chance to redo Power Rangers Samurai with AI, but who knows? The technology might make it a little easier, but somehow, I don't know about that. It's one of those things where I'm not quite sure if we'll get a chance to fix everything. We'll fix as much as we can, I guess. Sakura Amita says, after seeing what Marvel and DC are doing, I have fatigue of taking awful seriousness. I get up any superhero projects. Nowadays, I'm sticking to magical girls. Yeah, again, like the big mistake that we have with Power Rangers is that the violence doesn't match the storytelling. Like I was talking about with Kamen Rider and Masked Rider. Because Super Sentai is from Japan, as I said, they have a different threshold for these topics, different threshold for violence. Their children can watch things on TV and then not go out and mimic them, or at least to the effect that they're having the moms of Japan get up in arms over it. The imitatable violence, you remember that? But when it comes to this stuff, like 2017 movie was probably a pretty good example. In the Power Rangers 2017 movie, they tried to rationalize what a Power Ranger was. So they gave him this really kooky alien armor, really strange Zords that you couldn't really tell the ass from the head too often. I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex was the one you could really tell which end was which. Maybe the pterodactyl too. But the rest of them, you just really couldn't tell. It was just some very bizarre, sharp lines. Lol, this is not Transformers, but we got as close as we could. And the Megazord is just horrendous looking. I have no idea what child they had in mind when they designed that. But that's the big problem, is that the franchise tries to wrap itself around 5 to 8-year-olds who do not interact with this media anymore. 5 to 8-year-olds do not come through to this kind of stuff anymore, to this level of violence. They don't. They have Paw Patrol now. They have Blaze and the Monster Machines. That's what's occupying 5 to 8-year-olds, believe it or not. It's not this stuff here with this violence. This level of violence is up to 8 to 14-year-olds. That's where this usually hangs around. And that's why, because the parents see this on television and their kids are watching, like, no, 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 Billy. This is imitatable violence. We're going to watch Paw Patrol instead. And so what ends up happening is these Hollywood studios get a hold of this children's franchise that, you know, has a great deal of violence in it, but also a great deal of cheese and slapstick and just really tone-deaf messaging in contrast to the violence that it shows. I'll remind you, every episode of Power Rangers ends with death. That's the solution. If you can't defeat, if you can't reason with the character you're fighting with, you just kill them, okay? That's, if you can't come to peace with the monster, you kill it. So every episode of Power Rangers ends with something getting killed and blown up, in fact, not stabbed, not shot, blown up. Okay. And so again, it just has no place in the market space that they're trying to aim for. But in time, you end up with cinematic universes showing up like Adi Shankar's that tries to balance the level of violence that sells the toys with the characters themselves. And you end up with something way too hard. And so that's why I try to keep this stuff here not so serious in that they're going around killing everybody, but that there are consequences to being a Power Ranger, sort of like how there were consequences to being on Buffy's team in Buffy the Vampire Slayer from the late 90s. I grew up with that in syndication, and that's where I base a lot of my 8 to 14-year-old appeal. Black Pill Timon says the pirate theme could work if the universe were situated in that period. Well, that's how it was when I originally did the Power Rangers Legends way back in, what was it, 12 years ago now? Yeah, 2013, when Gokaiger originally showed up. Around 15 years ago, I wrote a fan fiction, and these Rangers were, again, traveling through time, but they were originating from the age of the American Revolution. And the Dominion had gone back in time to screw with America because America inspired all these ideas and blah, 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 blah. But that story ended up mutating into this one over the years as I tried to make sense of it. And I think it works in the modern era, having these people that are out of place, these space pirates in particular. They're from a far-flung future that has regressed because of the presence of this Empyrean Dominion that runs everything. This would be the Zangiak from Gokaiger with Warsgil, their leader there. Well, not the leader, but, the one going around blowing up everything. And I think it still works to have these space pirates going around in the modern era, but it needs to be played up that they are fish out of water when they interact with people from this time, that they don't know what smartphones are. They don't know what regular, road cars are because they don't have those. They're from space. And so they don't know about wheels and internal combustion and all this stuff. So there's funny scenes you can extract from that of characters sort of experiencing things for the first time, but you really have to be careful with that. You don't go overboard with it like they did with Masked Rider. It gets ugly very quickly. Makes the character look stupid. RJ McReady's here, and he says it's more than understandable. Conrado Javier says Saban could have edited the pirate symbol for a lightning logo. Not in so many usage of it, especially back in that era. They didn't have the ability to go through and do that on every single frame. They had to go through and do that on. So again, they just had to recontextualize it. That wasn't a pirate symbol. It was a symbol of rebellion and would have been over with. No problem. The need to adapt the common writers in the US, I just don't think that's going to help it to have that done. America needs to come up with its own tokusatsu. I've got my own ideas. I've got plenty of suits and characters and universes to work with, but it's just flatly a lot of companies just aren't interested because Power Rangers is the only one as far as the market is concerned. So when you see a guy wearing colored spandex and a helmet, they go, aha, it's a Power Ranger. And so it's hard to sell. It's hard to move around. It's hard to make toys. Brand confusion is very, very easy to have happen. And that's largely why you don't see an American tokusatsu rise up and do anything, even though Japan has like a bajillion little independent tokusatsus going on all the time. The US is just like, nah, let's wheel out Batman and Superman again for the 7,000th time and make them do some stupid stuff. The idea behind the transforming hero, I think, is very important in this era where people feel powerless. And I don't know, of course, we were talking about this the other day with the Epstein stuff. There are people who feel powerless in light of this and all this other stuff that's going on and the realization of different political elements. And this isn't the show to get into that. But what I wanted to highlight is it makes people feel powerless. And the idea of picking up a device and saying some neat catchphrase and transforming into an avatar of justice, well, that seems pretty attractive now, doesn't it? And what is a Power Ranger? What is a Kamen Rider? Exactly. They are avatars of justice brought forth through a transformation device. Saying a neat phrase, and ta-da, you're able to kick the ass of evil, whatever form it takes. And that's the big thing that really drives a lot of tokusatsu in the modern era. The success of it is the concept that regular people can go out and become superheroes. They can also become supervillains, like what happened here with Tommy from Season X. It becomes difficult to create an American tokusatsu around the concept of originality. A lot of people, as I said, see a Power Ranger there. And so it's very difficult to convince them that this is not a Power Ranger. This is another guy that does something similar, but he's not a Power Ranger. And for American audiences, it's very hard to get them motivated over this. The Armor Soars over on Disney, I wouldn't say they've successfully made an attempt to pull people's idea of what an armored guy around robots does, being a Power Ranger, try to pull that idea away. But they've definitely started to crack the facade in the minds of the populace that people wearing armor and interacting with robots to save the day, well, that's not necessarily a Power Ranger anymore in America. So there might be hope, but it is very, very hard to get the average, NASCAR American, your average, Pokemon American to look at another guy in spandex and a helmet and tell them that it's not a Power Ranger and expect them to believe it. They have a hard time with it. I'm just not interested in Tomb Raider or anything. I don't care where it comes from. I don't hate the franchise itself. I'm just burnt out on all this attempt to cash in on it. The last thing I cared about Tomb Raider was when Angelina Jolie was playing Lara, and it's been downhill since then. It's just been downhill. Camrado says Zato died for Hasbro's sins. That's right. You need that t-shirt out there somewhere. Tommy, as a mentor of Dino Thunder, was leftover concept from the cancel. Oh, okay. So that's a good idea. That's a good idea, having Tommy part of Hexagon. So he must have been the fourth one, or the main leader, I guess. But I know that Andros and Alex were supposed to be part of it. I want to say Carter was too. So having Tommy in there from Hexagon, though, that's a good idea. I'm glad that they at least brought that over a little bit. But I wish Disney never ditched Power Rangers for the MCU and Star Wars. Well, I think to myself, they would have ended up in the same position. Because Disney went around hiring a bunch of ideologues and political activists, and they brought that into their work, just like it found their way into Power Rangers eventually through Hasbro. And so, I mean, like, the biggest thing that they're proud of with Dino Fury is the fact that Izzy, the Green Ranger, that character got a GLAAD award for ripping her skirt off. Even though that character is a male character, the suit footage never had a skirt, and Power Rangers is well known for taking male characters and making them female characters without adding skirts to them. Like, half the Yellow Rangers in the Power Rangers series are dudes in their Sentai respective series in the donor footage. They're male characters. So I don't understand how that got a GLAAD award, why anybody was seal clapping for that. I flatly don't understand. Yeah, Americanizing is race swapping. Yeah, they think that's creative too. Jacob's here and he says, which birth rate needs more help, Japan or Korea? I would say Korea. Japan is at least still spread out across their islands. Like something like 50% of the population of South Korea lives in Seoul. And that you're just not gonna. That's the mouse utopia experiment, man. It's over. You can't have your population stacked like that. And they need to get back out into the countryside. They need to have some type of diversification in their economy. Not saying that they need to bring in immigrants, but they need to diversify what they need in that country so that people can live out in rural areas, so that people can live in suburban spaces, that they don't have to be in these gigantic cyberpunk dystopia cities where Samsung even owns the damn funeral homes. Yeah, if you don't know that, Samsung has funeral homes. Cradle to grave, man. Cradle to grave. Blackbill Timon says, also, Kamen Rider Black RX was less violent and less dark than Black. Yeah, so even then, had they tried to bring Black through, it would have been a bad idea. And I think RX's successor series, I forget which one that was. But again, that one was another one that Kamen Rider is always full of like violence that the moms of America would absolutely not tolerate over here. Absolutely not tolerate. We have Sagittarius Saya saying Disney didn't care about Power Rangers at all. You know what? If they didn't, they did a real good job of not caring and letting the showrunners make a decision. Because man, aside from Operation Overdrive, I don't like Jungle Fury, but I don't hate it as much as I hate Cosmic Fury and Dino Fury, so I'll give him credit there. I don't, you know, Jungle Fury, I think, really spat in the eye of Geki Ranger, but again, it's that violence thing that the Power Rangers brand just can't cross the realm into, despite being a show about people who fight each other. There's a level of violence it can't get to, and Geki Ranger is just flat out dudes beating each other up all the time, and Power Rangers just couldn't make sense of that. It couldn't bring that over because again, they're under the Moms of America with the imitatable violence situation, so they have to have caps on that stuff. So all the cool stuff that we saw in Geki Ranger, a lot of that got washed away. It's sort of like when Geki Violet has his appearance because Geki Violet is like using Muay Thai fighting against the bad guys in Geki Ranger, the henchmen. And then in Jungle Fury, RJ is just doing parkour over a bunch of cars while sparks go off. And it's very boring. It's very boring to watch in comparison. But that's what they had to do because that level of one-on-one violence was just not going to be tolerated by the Moms of America over here. Again, this is the problem with pitching toward 5 to 8-year-olds who simply don't absorb this content anymore. It needs to be upgraded to 8 to 14-year-olds. Black Pill Timon asks, DC and Marvel serious since when? What do you mean? Like, I don't know. Like serious. I think right now they have the Absolute series. Absolute Batman is like too serious. You miss the point of superheroes when you go and do the Absolute series and things like that. This is what I was talking about earlier about all this really gritty, angry stuff that the cinematic universes usually boil down into for these series, like Power Rangers, for instance. 2017 was a good example of just how bizarrely edgy that was without getting anywhere near anything that would be considered above a PG-13 rating. It was just such a strange concept to bring to life. But DC and Marvel, superheroes are supposed to have a super morality about them. That's what makes them superheroes. That's what sets them apart from cops and firefighters and EMS workers. Because the superhero is allowed to have the super morality where they forgive the murderer, where they take the murderer to the mass murderer, this sort of person. And you just can't expect that out of a regular human being. Will they carry that out? Yes. Will it be seen as honorable to bring this person to justice? Absolutely. But more often than not, the dog gets shot out behind the house as opposed to, being rehabilitated. That's what I'm trying to get at. All right. Usually in real life, those types of maniacal mass murderers don't make it to trial. That kind of thing. And so DC and Marvel have drifted so far away from this. Marvel kind of kicked it off, but DC's just sort of done it on steroids, is they've just completely moved away from aspirational heroes. These are just jackasses in spandex and capes that go around with their underwear on the outside, telling other people about all their stupid interpersonal drama while they're committing atrocities. Because drama. And this is another casualty of what was a children's brand having to become an adult brand in order to stay alive. And frankly, you can't do that. There are heroes that are made for adults, like the Punisher, for instance. Punisher, Invincible. I don't like I don't like it. I understand it. The Boys, those series, they're all made for adults. These are very adult viewpoints on heroism. Okay. But you can't bring Batman, Superman, the Justice League, and the Avengers with Captain America and Thor into that realm. They're just not built for it. So they end up becoming sad sacks that nobody wants anything to do with because they're blubbering and crying about having superpowers and just lol how hard it is to be a hero, I guess. RJ McReady says, feels as though it's only wise. I wait until word of mouth. I think I may have missed what that was about. I apologize. Toei is using Gavan Infinity as their flagship IP. I think Kamen Rider is still going to stay their flagship. I don't think Gavan Infinity is going to be around long enough to be their flagship. The way that the showrunners are talking about, the Toei showrunners are talking about Gavon Infinity is it's the first in chapter, it's first in the successive chapters of Project Red. So it's not meant to be another 50-year series. If it catches on, it may run for a few years, but it's largely meant to be one of those sample platters that they're doing this with. Project Red does not sound like it is supposed to be something that has a 50-year lifespan on it. It sounds like something where they're testing out concepts, giving these one-shot stories a season or two to go out into the world, and then moving on to something else. And if those previous things happen to catch on, then they're rolled into future productions. So is what it seems to be. Again, Toei's taking a big risk on this that I don't know if they're making the right risk with it. I don't think that Gavon Infinity's bad or anything. I'm excited to see it, but this might be a bit too lonely of an effort, if you will, that this maybe needed a few more shows in addition to Gavon Infinity to really make it stick, but we'll see. The MCU is like a high budget version of Power Rangers to the kids. Sure. I mean, a lot of the MCU really doesn't have any consequences. It doesn't tell much of a story. It's just trying to get you to the next cosmic event where they have to bring everybody together in order to have a big fight. You know, it's I think this was on display in Thor Love and Thunder, and that it was just doing so much servicing of the universe that it just didn't really tell a story of its own until like the last 10 minutes. So, it is what it is. If Power Rangers failed before Gavon Infinity, does it make Super Sentai return a little bit quick? By quick, I mean advertise Super Sentai in the West if Hasbro can't make Power Rangers. Well, Super Sentai's over with. That's done. Again, it's not canceled in the sense that it'll never come back, but they are definitely putting it on ice for the next 5 years anyway. It might be 10. So don't expect that to come riding to the rescue over here, or for us to get like releases of the old series or anything like that over here that'll be special. Hasbro has selected Disney to do a reboot series, and apparently Paramount is working on a cinematic universe for the Power Rangers. So they're not going to give up the brand rights, the market control of dudes in spandex beating on a dude in a rubber suit anytime soon. Whether that changes anything for you and me or any of the fans out there, I don't know. But honestly, I'm not looking forward to the Power Rangers reboot from New Disney, if you will. New Disney has a lot of political activists in there that can't help themselves, that they have to interject things that aren't important to the story in order to accomplish a political message that is not germane to the atmosphere or the story or the setting at all. It's again, it is much like how Dino Fury was just like, hey, we've never had a really heavy-handed romance in this series. Even back in the days when Tommy and Kat were being paired together, they really didn't have it. Merrick and Princess Shayla were kind of a thing, but they never kissed. Like he was more her simp, I guess. She had her immortal simp that played the flute. Again, nothing against Merrick. It would have been nice. Wes and Jen, maybe Wes and Jen had some on-screen kisses. No, I don't think so. I don't think they kissed. But what did we find? Oh, yes, we had to have Izzy and Fern at least, kiss on the cheek. So we all know that they're girlfriends, that kind of thing. Had to really shove that relationship down our throats in order to make sure that we owned the chuds with Power Rangers. And a lot of people go out there and they're like, well, kids are going to run into gay people. That's the decision for the parents to make, okay? As I try to remind people, what's the difference between a gay couple and a straight couple? Gay couples don't bleed the rainbow. They don't poop unicorns. No, they're just regular people. What's different is the sex. Homosexual, heterosexual. It's the sexual part. That's the difference. And that's not something that Billy and Sally need to be talking about or dealing with when they have Power Rangers on. Okay? It's just not something that needs to be coming up in conversation during Power Rangers. What needs to come up is team dynamics. What needs to come up is how to handle yourself in a situation where violence is imminent. that's important to the Power Ranger brand. That's sort of the core of its identity, not trying to ram through social politics and try to normalize this conversation without the parents being involved. Again, I'm not telling you that gay people don't exist. What I'm telling you is suffocating a story with it isn't helping the cause. Ichigo was very easy to adapt. Evil corporation, dude end up getting powers, traveling around and investigating weird stuff happening. That may be the work of the evil corporation. And a lot of the time, translating that stuff over is the best idea. It's pretty easy, pretty, simple, if you will, to have these stories come over. Because as I said, Time Ranger and Time Force are almost one-to-one the same. I think there was another one that was pretty close to it. I forget which one it was. Lightspeed Rescue was pretty close, but it was also pretty different at the same time. Man, I don't remember which one it was, but there were a couple of them that were like almost one-to-one copies of the Super Sentai. So when it comes to translating the Kamen Rider stuff, the best thing to do would be to one-to-one adapt it. But I just don't trust these modern writers to be able to handle that kind of stuff to them. Like, it's the pressure, or rather just the in-group preference these people have to force their personal life story into the material is too great. They can't separate their own experiences from what they're creating, and thus the characters are just them. And those characters then must carry their politics because they're them. I didn't write any of these characters to be, hold on, let me bring it up. There it is. I didn't write any of these characters to be me. They're not. There are different chunks of my personality that I use to inform who they are, but they are in no way products of me. They're not my clones. They're not self-inserts. There are just certain ideas about the world that I imbued into them from me that I thought would help grow their appeal to an audience. That's it. That's it. But, you've got things like in Starfleet Academy where they absolutely have to interject their politics into everything. I don't know if you noticed or not. It was recently pointed out to me that the distinction between the races in Starfleet Academy is almost obliterated. One of the main contentions within Star Trek has been how these different cultures get along, sort of like our real world, and that countries and nations and peoples tend to be pretty different from each other. Even neighboring countries tend to be a bit different from each other. This is why the Vulcans and the humans, we got along okay, but there were massive rifts in how we understood each other because the Vulcans come from a separate culture. Nope. The point of Spock being a half-breed was to illustrate the bridge between these cultures, and he was constantly tortured over being that bridge because it was unethical to force a child to become the bridge between cultures. But Starfleet Academy is just full of it. Like, some crazy orgy happened and all these students are a product of it. It's nuts. It's nuts. And it's another thing that erodes the appeal of these shows on top of that, because Star Trek, again, was about all these various different peoples putting aside their differences and agreeing to all become a unified force for good. Similarly to how the Power Rangers have always functioned. Zach, Trini, Kimberly, Billy, Tommy, and Jason have fuck all to do with each other. I mean, Kimberly and Trini might run into each other because of their gymnastic stuff, but they largely didn't have anything in common until they started talking to each other. Same thing with Zach and Billy. Do you think Zach and Billy would ever run into each other in real life? Not at all. Billy didn't even know how to fight when this show started, let alone Tommy have any interaction with them at all, being the new kid. Again, it's one of those things where their differences is what brought them together to make a stronger team, because each of them had a role to play on that team, something to contribute. And that just is not part of the thinking in these modern stories. It's just, these would be cute people to have together to hang out somewhere and it would be fun, whatever, just a fun time to hang out and be friends. And it just it's not smart, in my opinion, to lack the defining quality of each character and instead boost up what makes them a character that is entertaining to look at on screen. It's the jester versus the knight, if you will. Okay. The jester is fun to look at because the jester's jumping around, cute costume, he's doing his thing, he's making noise. The knight is cool to look at because he's got armor and honor and he's doing things involving self-sacrifice. Very different style of appeal, but for whatever reason, they just can't negotiate. They just can't negotiate. Yeah, I agree that Kingdom Come is probably the best. It's my favorite of them. It's not just because of Alex Ross's art style, but Kingdom Come really illustrates, I think, probably what DC's suffering from right now is people wanting an aggressive, more violent hero, and the classic superheroes sort of being muscled out by that attitude. Superman goes into hiding, obviously, in that series after he's defeated by Magog, and Lex Luthor brainwashes Billy Batson into becoming a Superman killer. So pretty gross, in my opinion, that the world has evolved into what it is, has evolved into that comic book. It's pretty bizarre. I think it would be fun if like there was somebody that actually knew more about that mutation in comics than I do. Because again, like I lost interest as they started to erode into more heavy-handed politics, let's put it that way, or at least more on the nose politics. So somebody that's actually stayed with these properties probably would be able to tell you just how close Kingdom Come has become to reality inside of the comic book universe. Black Pill Timon says, about DC and Marvel seriousness, now they are not. They are silly and stupid. Seriousness comes with writers taking their work serious, investing in good characters and story. And that's what I mean about any of these modern writers having anything to do with you know, the adaptation of Common Writer. I'm sorry, my brain blanked, but the adaptation of Common Writer, because when it comes down to carrying out that kind of adaptation, they're not going to take it seriously. To them, it's just, oh, this is another version of Power Rangers. They don't, a lot of the writers they bring in fact, the majority of the writers they bring in, as we've shown here on this channel, I think I still have the clip. Is it? Here it is.
I was not very steeped in the comics.
I didn't read any comics or do any research.
I wasn't familiar with comics. I wasn't familiar with the movies.
We didn't lean into a whole lot of the history of the comic books.
Yeah, candidly, we were not enormous comic fans.
I wasn't super into superhero comics when I was a kid. I read a lot of like indie press stuff.
First thing I was told is don't read the comics.
Really?
As a creator, they put you in a bubble. They don't let you talk about any of the other projects, right?
You know, they're up for anything.
We ultimately decided to redefine it for the series and thought that it worked better for the story that we're trying to tell.
Did you ever read you haven't read the comic?
When the DVD comes out, I'm going to read a Thor comic book and just see where we went wrong.
And there you go. I mean, that's what you're dealing with. That's who's making these shows now, are dorks like that don't want anything to do with the original property and just want their paycheck so they can move on. Now, I call them dorks, not geeks, right? You remember dorks in school. They had no friends, and so they all kind of gathered around each other and being miserable, you know, piles that they were. Well, that's who you're looking at that's writing this stuff now. People who are just so miserable and up their own ass that they can't possibly envision a character that's divorced from their ideology even. It's why every villain is Trump now, because that's all they can do. They can only hyper-fixate on what they're being, like, rattled at, you know, raged at in their group chats. They have no ability to create a villain out and beyond that. Then again, a lot of people can look at Starstrikers and say, oh, wow, this is about the rebellion against the people in Minnesota against the president of the United States because, you know, it's a ragtag group of rebels working against an overpowering, all-consuming governing body. No, it's not even about Biden. It's not about Obama. It's not about the UN. It's not about Europe. It's about space pirates and a space empire that have fucking nothing to do with today's politics or politics 100 years ago or politics 100 years from now. It's just fucking space pirates and a fucking space empire. That's it. It's not that hard. Believe it or not, space empires have a lot of palace intrigue that have nothing to do with the 2024 election or Russia. Crazy, right? Crazy how a space empire doesn't have anything to do with Putin. Crazy. It's crazy how space pirates can be opposed to that space empire without that having any allegory to 1930s Germany. It annoys me to no end that we are constantly trapped in this type of cycle where these idiots are brought in to manhandle these properties, and all they can come up with is some political screed. It always melts down into, I like this guy and I don't like that guy, so I'm going to make a movie about how much I don't like that guy and how much I like this guy. Can you imagine how insufferable Rocky would be if it was made today? Can you imagine how absolutely insufferable it would be today? Gosh, you'd be drowning in the real world allegories. Pain, just pain. We have Sagittarius Saya saying, I don't think any companies will buy the rights of Power Rangers because they're going treated the franchise and actors like garbage. Well, I mean, that's Simon Bennett famously told Jason David Frank, the most famous of the Power Rangers, that he was just a helmet and could be replaced. So it's one of those things where nobody has their priorities right involved with that show anymore. And you're right. If people buy it, it's definitely not going to continue on the way that we thought it would. Excuse me. I don't mean to be so gassy. I apologize. The problem with it is that these guys have already sold off all the old suits, all the old equipment. Hell, some of it ended up being on display at the Super Sentai Museum exhibit in Japan. They bought that stuff back off of Hasbro and they put it on a display over there. I'm not kidding you. You can go and look at some of the posts that came out of there. There were people that said, hey, wait a minute. I saw that at an auction. That's how bad Hasbro fucked up that Super Sentai went and made sure there was an archive of the stupid bullshit that Power Rangers came up with. The unique stuff that Power Rangers added to the lore. Okay? So you're not going to get the return of any of these characters that I showed you. You're not going to get any of them. They sold all the suits, all of them. That's why I feel comfortable going out here and making these productions, because Hasbro's not going to have anything to do with this. They can order a cease and desist because it looks too real or whatever, but they're not going to have anything to do with Pirate Power Rangers. They're not going to do that because, again, they can't. The show Bible demands that they don't show the Rangers in any type of criminal light. And, of course, pirates are criminals. That's the point of them. Yeah, Zach would bully the shit out of Billy. Exactly. Again, like the way that the Power Rangers functioned has always been the idea of forming a team, and that team ends up creating the disillusion of social barriers. These friends are able to align around each other around the common desire to do good, and from that desire to do good, they learn they are more similar than they thought they were. They find out that they're actually more alike than they thought they were before they became a team. Totally forgotten now, by the way. That's fucking gone. We got an alien guy with antennas out of his face that says cool, cool, coolio, and then he became Space Jesus, so that's neat. Awesome One is here, and he says, I remember Power Rangers being a school drama with robots and aliens. Yeah, it's kind of grown out of that, but Super Sentai was the originating footage behind that. And so Super Sentai was never limited to kids in high school. That was really a Power Rangers thing. Again, in an attempt to capture that 8 to 14-year-old market, they tried to bring it as close to them as they could. It would look pretty absurd to have a bunch of kids like Justin running around transforming into 6-foot-tall Power Rangers. But it's not too out of the question to have teenagers who are, of course, older than the demographic and thus people that the younger kids would look up to, literally, being the heroes. I just don't think it's smart, right, to do that permanently, to keep the Power Rangers. In fact, I don't think we should have another Power Rangers team that's set in school. In my opinion, they should be all out of like military organizations or some type of organized group that has brought this team together, made up of adults. They should be professionals of some kind. It's not because you can't trust teenagers anymore, but the bar of believability just vanishes with that violence now. The level of violence that's in Power Rangers is just simply not something indicative of people that are under 18. Not that they don't watch that stuff, but Naruto is an anime, so a lot of people can see like a little 14-year-old kid doing all that crazy stuff and they're like, haha, this is cool, I love it. But in real life, when you start seeing like a teenager going out and risking their life over and over again, getting bloodied up for it and whatnot, it just sits wrong. It just sits wrong. So you want to see an adult doing that. And again, by moving that up, you have the ability to age up the franchise itself to 8 to 14-year-olds, which is where Buffy was usually located. And those stories can then be more applicable to people who are adults, who are teenagers, and you can widen the audience through that. But Hasbro just doesn't want to risk it. They want to be able to make their toys. And I just don't see where they're going to be able to make that happen following that old formula. It just isn't going to work. Austin McNeil says, hey, buddy, I really can't wait for more Power Rangers, Hollow Earth, and the Zeo season. Yeah, as I mentioned, I have a lot of it planned out. What I'm trying to do is make sure that the AI can deliver an episode. These little screenshots with a bunch of narration in between are fun and whatnot, but it sort of steals the flow of the story. So what I'm trying to do is to be able to at least create cutscenes between all that narration, as opposed to just a still frame while I'm talking at you about what's supposedly happening here. And if not, a full episode, if I can make that happen. And the limitation on violence with the AI is really the big hang up right now. And again, it's, you can do poses like this where a character's been defeated, they're battle damaged, that sort of thing. Another character has his foot on their stomach, that sort of thing. But the AI really, really struggles with doing active violence because, again, the filters are in place to make sure that you can't generate pictures of, your family or political figures or the bully from school getting chopped up and things like that. It's very, very sensitive to the kind of violence that Power Rangers is known for. Let's put it that way. So humanoid on humanoid violence is difficult for the AI to negotiate in motion. You can do stills and things like that, but it's very difficult to get it to commit. So at least in a serious way, you can create stuff, but it just looks it looks like it's out of a comedy movie. Sakura Amita has sent me an image. Let me see if I can find it somewhere. Oh, wrong account. That's probably why I can't find it. I don't see it popping up. Where am I? Am I meant to find it on Twitter or? I don't know where I'm meant to find it. Sorry about that. Maybe we'll find it a little later here as we keep talking. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, Lord Drakkon is Trump. Yeah, again, like there's just so many stupid, like I don't know if it's gotten that far, but I'm sure they're trying to figure out how to make that work. Evil Tommy, Drakkon is Palpatine, Trump, Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, exactly. It's all modern politics being stuffed into this stuff because they can't think of anything else. They can't think of a conflict that doesn't involve their own personal preferences. And that's what dominates a lot of today's media is how the writer is feeling the moment they're writing the script. They don't think about what they're creating. They're just reacting and like, oh, I need to make this. I need to make a statement. I need to signal that I am the hero. And so I will force these fictional heroes to execute my personal sense of heroism. It's the only right thing to do, Whereas everybody can relate to feeling powerless. Everybody can relate to having a moment in their life, even before the current one with all the crazy stuff going on with Epstein. And, saying, you know what, I'll put an end to this craziness myself. Everybody's had that moment where they're like, I'm just going to take the law into my own hands. Clearly, the others aren't capable of doing it. Everybody's got that moment. Thankfully, we don't act on it. But what if a Power Ranger did? And that's what brought me to this Drakkon, who's not the Drakkon that you know. It's not Tommy it's not JDF, that sort of thing. It's the Tommy from the Hollow Earth story that I was talking about earlier. And so This guy is, of course, driven to the extents of destruction and power stacking that he is in order to protect the people he cares about, even though he's fighting them while he's accumulating power to protect them. And again, this is not like that toxic masculinity or anything like that. It's not meant to be a critique on men taking on too much social responsibility, blah, blah, blah. It's not meant to be anything like that. Like I said, Kimberly ends up killed by Time Force in an accident, but Tommy doesn't know that. And he reacts very poorly to that information and decides that he will take on destroying evil in all of its forms. Rather than just destroying the evil that's presenting itself, he's going to hunt all of it down and destroy it so there is no evil anymore, no more threats. Kind of like what happened with Tony in Age of Ultron. This is not my personal crusade. I don't want this Tommy going out and fighting Antifa members. I don't want him going out and fighting Islamic warriors. I don't want him going out and fighting the French. You know, I don't want him going out and fighting people that I have my own personal opinions about that may not be great. I don't want him going out and fighting the Democrats. I don't want some allegory or mutated Hillary Clinton consuming the universe and he has to go punch it in its squid face or something. I don't know. That's all stupid in my mind. There's no need for that. This is a more guttural story that relies on the very basic human instinct that when you are overwhelmed, when you feel powerless, a cruelty forms in your heart. I think it was Alfred in Batman versus Superman that said the quote, "Ah, yes, that's how it starts. The feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel." And this is the theory behind this Drakkon. That's why it's not JDF. It's not JDF's Drakkon either. It takes on the title and the meaning, of course, but the visuals are different. I redesigned, I designed my own version of Drakkon. I merged the Drakkon armor, the base Drakkon armor with the samurai Drakkon armor and got this. And that's how you end up with being able to tell something more unique. And again, this story is not meant to play on how powerless you feel now. This story is meant to play on the powerlessness that everybody feels throughout all time. It's part of being human, especially if you have a greater faith of a greater power above you. You feel quite powerless in the events of your life as you plead with that deity to assist you or be nicer to you or bring favor to your life, that sort of thing. Again, I'm not trying to tell you who to pray for. This isn't the show to do that. But this is a story about that sense of powerlessness when you are faced with, overwhelming odds, an insurmountable loss, and you don't see any sense in it. You don't see any reason behind it. You get cruel. You get angry. And that's what happened to this guy. It's a very human reaction to this stuff. So, yeah, military like Changeman, like Jack, like Go-Go 5, Time Ranger. Wasn't Jetman like a military group, but they were like independent of the government? They were like, an O Ranger too was a military group, right? They were like some type of paramilitary or mercenary group or something like that. Some type of defense group that wasn't associated with the government anyway. And that, again, like this just makes more sense that this group would be putting together this type of firepower as opposed to lol random teenagers in math class are the best suited to fight this alien invasion. Jotaro did all the violent stuff despite being a kid. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We have Sagittarius Seiya saying, in case you don't know that Hasbro has stole the Legend of the White Drakkon for once and always without Jason David Frank noticed. I didn't know that they stole it. I thought Bat and the Sun just is so inept that they can't figure out how to release it or something. I don't know. I gave up trying to understand it around 2019 or so, 2020. What was going on with White Dragon. I think JDF was still alive at the time, and I just gave up trying to understand it because it was such a bizarre situation with them that they couldn't even come forward and explain what the hell was going on with it. And of course, after he died, Bat and the Sun guy came out and made up a bunch of excuses about why the movie wasn't coming out immediately or whatever. And here we are, almost like what, 10 years after it finished filming. Was it 20? No, it wasn't 2015, but it's pretty close. I think it was like 17 or 18. It finished filming, and it's almost 10 years after it finished filming. It's just ridiculous. It's gonna be like those Chris Farley movies that came out 10 years after he died. Really weird. The writer wishes Hillary was their president. Sure, I don't doubt that at all. It's on Twitter X. I lost my password, so I made a new account. Well, maybe it's hiding in the mentions. Nope. I don't see it. Sorry, Sakura. Yeah, I don't see it in the mentions section either. So, my apologies. I don't see it. My messages. Nope. Don't see it there either. I'm sorry, Sakura. I'm not trying to not find it. I just can't. I apologize. Jetman was created by a special military organization, but most were civilians. Okay. So again, I mean, like this type of structure isn't bad for what you're doing. Okay. The Power Rangers aesthetic should be more military, in my opinion. Not just because America is so military heavy, but it's just easier to convey why these people are coming together, why the power has chosen these people. It's kind of like how Hal Jordan made sense and Jon Stewart made sense. Kyle Rayner didn't make a lot of sense, despite being how competent he was and how cool he was. Kyle, being an artist, just didn't really make a lot of sense. Of course, he could visualize some cool stuff to do with the ring and whatnot. But why would that be important in a combat scenario? I mean, obviously you want the ring to be able to execute the mission, not do it like in some flashy, cool ass way. They have a limited amount of power. So the more difficult the construct, the more power it draws out of the ring. So Kyle's, giant robots that he was generating and things like that sure do look cool on a comic book page, but the lore itself, it's ridiculous. You're burning through your power in that ring, your charge up in that ring just astonishingly fast. Whereas, old Hal Jordan was like, yeah, you know what? I could generate a giant robot, but how about the fist? Boom. That was it. Jon Stewart would generate big guns. And that was his thing. He would just generate cannons. And Kyle just went crazy with his designs. And, with the lore, it should it should drain the battery. It should be not functioning for whatever reason. No, I didn't turn off notifications. Just Twitter, for whatever reason, isn't showing me where you've tagged me anywhere. I have a bunch of stuff from Rick, from the Barroom Podcast, because he likes to keep me up to date on Japanese news. As if I didn't know, but that's it. And then of course Packer Girl Nerdigan's tagging me in something about Manabu Yoshiro's tank chair getting a TV adaptation. Like, that's cool. I like that. That guy's pretty cool. I'm glad he's getting a TV show. But I'm sorry, Sakura, I don't see a notification from a new account or anything associated with Power Rangers in my notification right now. I apologize. It's sent to me, not Bounding, right? Did you send it to Bounding? Black Pill Timon says, yes, people are trained to fight. Knowing how to fight is more plausible. Right. You don't have to have like these, 6'8" pure super muscle Marines doing it. It makes sense, certainly, that they're the ones doing it, but you can have like your average jet pilot being selected to be a jet man. You obviously wouldn't call them that, but the Jetman heroes piloting jets would be recruited from, that's right, probably the Air Force, a military group that's associated with the Air Force or does something with stunt flight. That makes sense. as opposed to some teenagers that have never flown a plane and don't have a driver's license suddenly be flying around in Mach 10 animal themed jets. It's a little much to try and swallow there. It's one of those things where the children are kept in mind in a lot of these like series designs and how they're meant to execute the story. But I also think we're really dumbing down kids by doing that. When we create shows like Lightspeed Rescue, for instance, which for a while was doing a good job of showing the heroes saving people as opposed to just killing monsters, and then as the Sentai footage continued to demand more monster fighting, Lightspeed couldn't provide those human rescues anymore. And so the show, in my opinion, sort of suffered from that because Lightspeed Rescue was about first responders responding and, of course, encountering superpowered demons and whatnot, as Go-Go 5 was. And I personally think that's a much stronger angle for these stories than random teenagers being summoned to beat the ass off a space witch on the moon. So it's a whole different type of problem that we're facing with this now because they've let it mutate far and beyond where stuff like this is acceptable. Even now, if you show this to people, they're going to have a problem with any part of it. Like the girls have their boobs out, or the guys look too masculine, the girls look too pretty, that sort of thing. There's just a litany of problems that are going to come spewing out of the critiquers because we've just allowed this franchise to become a rag, a political rag, especially in the last two series. I mean, boiling Zato down to Space Jesus because they didn't know what to do with Amelia was stupid. They wanted Amelia to be the Red Ranger, but they had made such a big deal about Zato being the Red Ranger because, the first Black Asian Red Ranger, because that we have to celebrate the racial demographics of our heroes now because that mattered. Remember the parade that they threw when TJ became the leader of Turb? Oh, yeah. No, everybody was like, this guy's cool. And we all moved on. How about that? Yeah. Remember the parade when Scott became the other Black Ranger to become Red Ranger? When Jack became the other Black Ranger? Oh, yeah. No, that didn't. Yeah, Black guy becoming Red. Yeah. Everybody was just kind of like, that's a great actor, and he did a good job. Huh. How about that? It's almost like it matters who the actor is, not how they tan in the sun. Weird. But as I said, and again, I could have made this team all white. I could have made them all Asian. I could have made them all Black, all Latino, whatever you want. But I stuck to the usual Power Ranger formula of having a mixed group of people who are coming from different demographics, different backgrounds, and pooling their resources toward a common goal. Kind of like how you're supposed to do this, as opposed to purely random people becoming friends out of nowhere. Which is, again, what we saw for the majority of Neo-Saban and Hasbro's run, because their writers don't know how humans behave. They got all their social cues from sitcoms. Stupid. Timon says, yes, people. Oh, I already got that one. Timon says, maybe the Space Force, since most of the enemies are aliens. Sure, you could make this a recruitment thing for Space Force if you wanted to. But even then, you're drifting too far into politics, in my opinion, with this kind of stuff, because we're not. The children's television shows are meant to be inspirational. Adult television shows you can entertain however you like. But children in particular should be given aspirations in their media. There shouldn't be a grim, dark universe for children. That is the antithesis of the point of the superhero. That's the absolute opposite end of what a superhero should even be remotely engaged in, let alone what we find ourselves neck deep in these constant, stupid reboots of things that are honestly meant for kids. Look at the new He-Man trailer. I mean, that's just MCU light with Guardians of the Galaxy smeared all over it to try and make it appealing to people who like that movie. Why? Because they don't give any shits about the original property. They don't care. They're just not interested in making sure that children of that era that are now adults, of course, recognize the program the movie as part of their original property. They want to make sure that they drag all of it into the modern era, which kills it. Apparently, He-Man fighting Skeletor to the death is just not something we can have in these movies that are clearly made for adults. This He-Man movie in no way should be for children. I'm sorry. It doesn't need to be grim, dark, and evil, but kids don't know what a He-Man is. They're not going to take an interest in it. It's a property that their dad likes, okay? Their uncle likes, they're just not, they're not going to engage with it the way that the adults are going to. So smearing it up to make it look like the MCU and the Guardians of the Galaxy isn't going to help. It's going to cause the audience that you could have relied on to not have an interest in it. And that's arguably the problem with the Power Rangers reboot, with whatever the Percy Jackson guys come up with, because they're going to end up overshooting the mark in that the bad guys are going to be some type of political allegory, and then the team members themselves are going to end up being just probably callbacks to Mighty Morphin. So you'll have Jason, you'll have Tommy, you'll have Kimberly and Zach and Billy and Trini, but it'll be like this, like the 2017 movie where they are nothing like the characters they originally were. Which, again, what are you doing? Why use those names? Why without evoking who they were? What are you doing? This is a decision I made when I was making Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth. Is in Season X, as I said, I need to bring through who these characters are in the original series. I can't go rewriting them for the sake of fun. I had to twist Tommy a bit in order to make sure that he was separate from the Green Ranger, because the fans, they prefer the Green Ranger being evil. I like the White Ranger, so I wasn't about to drop that in order to make sure we had an evil Tommy. The case is that to make Tommy more accessible, it just mattered adding in that he was homeschooled and a self-taught martial artist. Done. No problem anymore. You haven't diverted that character anywhere away from where he originally was when he came into this show. The only thing you've done is place him in a scenario that explains why he was an outsider. That's it. That's all you've done now. You just explained why he was late to the team because he was homeschooled. That's it. But they can't do that. They can't evolve beyond that. Let me move over here to Twitter and see if I can find Sakura Mita's post to me. Let me just do a regular search and see if I can find. Nope. I'm sorry, Sakura Mita. I don't know what's going on. I don't have any restrictions turned on or anything like that. I just did a search out on the regular search bar, like at Cider Hype, and nothing. Even under the latest tab, I don't see anything from you. It's just a bunch of again stuff from Rick and replies to the various political posts I made about Maine. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not coming through. I guess we have Elon to thank for that. I apologize. Simone says, the other thing I don't like was the girl with the braids. Braids don't look good on white people ever. Well, that's the thing, is I just wanted her to have like this the pirate look to her, and the long flowing blonde hair wasn't working. So I figured, where do I put that? So I figured having Ramona with her braids wouldn't hurt too bad, She is she's meant to be that character that is like Andros. She's heartbroken and compensating for that heartbreak by acting very hard and very tough. So her exterior is very misleading to her true intentions, to her actual aspirations. If you go over to my channel, Cider Hype here on YouTube, I did put a song together for her that's called All the Colors of the Rainbow. And it's intended to be her song about her aspirations. And it sings about wanting to be a mother and a wife and a space explorer and to live many lives. And the chorus is that All these dreams mean without your love mean nothing at all because she's intended to fall in love with the Silver Ranger. And through that trust that she builds with him is able to let down her braids. You know, a lot of what you see with the characters that I create are characters that are beginning in one place and ending in another. I like characters that go through a transformation, that have a better idea of themselves after an adventure. Superman is my favorite character, even though his morality never changes, that kind of thing. He's always the guy that's right. It's one of the things I love about him. But that can't exist in the Power Rangers universe. Even the heroes are supposed to grow and change and have different opinions of the world than they did when they first became Power Rangers. That's kind of the point of the series, is that it takes a normal person from their normal life and accelerates them into this very abnormal situation. And I'm not just talking about 5 teenagers with attitude. Every Power Rangers series starts off with people who are flatly unaware of the Power Rangers or, you know, believe that they're not going to be part of that group, becoming part of that group. And it's very important that that has an effect on them, even though we don't see that happen anymore. I mean, like, you know, try and find me a Power Rangers series from Neo-Saban or Hasbro that had the characters changing as a result of them becoming Power Rangers. I mean, for, you know, the Blue Ranger maintains being a magician in Ninja Steel. Like, I get that they're supposed to be quirky and strange, but man, like, maybe drop the magician thing now that you're a Power Ranger. That attention-seeking thing is kind of being met now that you're going out in public and people are cheering your name or cheering your color, I guess. I don't know. It was just a really bizarre thing to see a character continue to be so public about it, including the Gold Star Ranger in Ninja Steel as well, being a country music singer while being a Power Ranger. I mean, at least Kira in Dino Thunder wanted to be a music singer, but wasn't when she was a Power Ranger. It just adds a level of complexity to this person being involved in the Power Ranger world that's completely unnecessary. This is why I say a military group best suits it, because everybody's pointed in the same direction. They have the same goals and they're all aware of why they have the same goals. SPD stands out. You have a group of cadet police officers being called up to action because the lead guys, A Squad, have gone missing. And so they need the next group up. And the powers that were supposed to be awarded to A Squad are now given to B Squad because A Squad's not around to get those powers. It makes perfect sense. It really does. I mean, SPD is probably the best executed of the Disney series. I mean, Ninja Storm's pretty good, but it has its rough edges. But I think SPD really is the most solid of the Disney installments, of course. But I don't know. I think it's one of those ones where it was sort of one in a million. You know, one in a million. It's why I tell people that the MCU ended with Infinity War. The end game never happened, and none of the rest of it ever happened. Thanos won, and that was it. Everybody was like, yeah, well, that's good enough. You know, I refuse to acknowledge that end game happened and any of it afterward happened. Just the MCU ended with Infinity War. That's it. That's it. Sakura says, but even with that, they go to spend too much money and earn too little to nothing at the end in theaters. And yeah, you're right. They're going to end up killing He-Man. Same situation. Well, Super Sentai is largely for adults in the West. Like the entertainment and the context of those stories is very adult. So Kamen Rider even more so. You know, it's very, like I said, the Japanese have a very different threshold for violence and conversation. Like a lot of the conversations that you see happening in Super Sentai appear to be innocent until you really apply that context to what they're talking about. And you're like, oh, wow, this is like MCU level conflict that we're dealing with here. Take, for instance, what was happening with Stinger in Q Ranger and Champ in Q Ranger. Like that is a crazy dynamic. Like a guy that was trapped being an assassin killed the creator father of another guy on the team, and they got to work that out, or at least got blamed for killing that guy, and they got to work that out. You just don't see that in anything other than like the MCU. You know, you don't see that. You don't see that surface and in children's stories because again, it has to deal with death. So when is Monday? I'm going to ask Nerdigans for now on, right? I don't know. I don't know why it's not sending it through. I might get the notification 2 or 3 hours from now for whatever reason. It's X. It's full of surprises these days. Sakuramita also asked, in my version of Mighty Morphin, Tommy died by the time in space. He became the White Ranger to prove his worth after years of training and return from his grave. Oh, okay. Well, again, I mean, the White Ranger is very much a Jesus-like allegory. Again, not to get political on this, but when you fully acknowledge just what exactly the symbolism behind that, the Green Ranger died, and then he returned as the White Ranger, transformed. He died as a plagued, sinful character and returned as a purified leader character. So there's a lot of Jesus symbolism there. Again, the early Saban era, I would say the Saban era in general, is very colored by Judeo-Christian ideology. If you go back through the lore, there's quite a bit of it in there. There's a lot of the Sword of Light is another one that's a good example of that. Zordon being a Christ-like figure as well, that everyone everywhere regards him as the bestest of the best. And of course, his sacrifice purifying the evil that it touched, that sort of thing. Very, very much a Judeo-Christian ideology behind that. And of course, Hayam Saban, being as passionate about Israel as he is, undoubtedly had some decision-making in all of that. Shuki Levy, another father of Power Rangers. I think I've said his right name right. Shuki Levy. By the way, the guy came up with a massive amount of theme songs that are great. Jason and the Wheeled Warriors, I think is what it is. Fantastic theme song. You want to get out of bed in the morning, you need an anthem for it. Jason the Wheeled Warriors will get you motivated, man. Whatever you need to do, that song will get you going. And yeah, Shuki Levy was also a very passionate defender of Israel. And so I have to assume that those guys were very devout in their Judaism. And so a lot of the themes from the Old Testament are present in some of the early Power Rangers stuff. Tommy literally returns from a giant white light and is lowered down to the ground as though he's levitating down from heaven. So again, and his arms aren't spread out in the Jesus thing. They're spread out in front of him because they were aware of him having his arms spread out would be a little too on the nose. So they had him with like his arms out in front of him for some reason. Like he was like mid dive before he did the leaning into the dive. So he's just sort of like, I'm on my way, guys. I'll be down any minute. It's a very strange pose to be in. But that whole thing, and again, like we've had several different references to the Bible and whatnot in, you know, the Bible, Torah, where we want to go with, in space, another one that referenced a lot of those ideologies. I forget. I think there was one ranger that was like 1-to-1 Moses. You know, he was raised by I think that's Ryan's story or something. Oh no, I think Ryan's the story of Joseph, where he was sold into slavery and betrayed. I think that's the story of Ryan Mitchell from Lightspeed, is that his father gave up Ryan in order to keep Dana, and he regretted that decision forever. Of course, he was punished for that kind of thing. And Ryan, of course, returned and forgave him and became his son again. So again, there's a lot of that kind of allegory and symbolism in that, and you can be gentle with it. I don't think it's right to be heavy-handed with it in children's media. There's plenty of Bible programming that is like straight on talking about that, the Veggie Tales and whatnot. I don't think it services God well to have the Power Rangers carrying the cross. It's all right to have references to that sort of thing, but nothing like straight on biblical quotes, nothing straight on Moses becoming a Power Ranger, you know, the disciples becoming Power Ranger. I think that's just, it's another ethical line I don't want to cross, where you end up committing blasphemy, trying to speak for the holiest of holies and that sort of thing. I think it gets ugly at that point. And in my opinion, Power Rangers has its high points when it's trying very hard to incorporate ideas of faith, but not hammer you over the head with any particular faith's morality. Because again, I don't think that Christianity is wrong or doesn't belong in Power Rangers. Same way I don't think that Judaism doesn't belong in Power Rangers. Islam, that, well, you know, in my opinions about Islam. But it's not that. It's that the show itself is a fictional universe where you have demons, where you have space aliens, where you have wizards, where you have magical machines that can travel through time, that can travel through space, that can travel to other universes. You have a talking sword. You have just all of these fantastical elements that defy any righteous order in the, you know, religious texts like the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, so on and so forth. The ideas in Power Rangers just straight up defy that stuff. And so it's better that you not wrap that around faith, because when you fold that back in on itself, it just becomes a mess. It's the same problem with putting in so much politics, is it ends up becoming this religious screed as a political screed on the other side of it, the political screed. It becomes a religious screed that people are more focused on, oh yeah, that's the Bible. Oh yeah, that's the Torah. Oh yeah, that's the Quran, as opposed to the story you're actually telling on screen. You know, it's zapped a lot of the energy out of Dino Fury, what little it had, when the story just became all about Izzy and Fern. It just zapped the energy away because we're not talking about kids' problems anymore. We're talking about adult problems. Stupid. Pick a lane, you know, pick a lane. Do I plan to do more chill live streaming? Sure. I need to get more Power Rangers stuff rolling. I need to write articles about this kind of stuff. We have the reboot coming up soon. We should be getting at least casting news, like official casting news about that any day now. If they're going to start putting out a show next year, they really need to start making that fucking show. You know, they can't, we're going to do her. We're going to do her, guys. We're going to do her. Keep investing. We're going to do her. It's just stupid. Pick a lane, you know? This is one of the things that, let me just break this down. One of the things I'm trying to demonstrate here is you can just make your own shows now. Just make them. Screw it. Just make your own show. If I get a cease and desist order, I'll get a cease and desist order and delete that stuff. They can't sue me unless I resist that cease and desist order, or I'm out here deliberately trying to profit off this stuff, which I'm not. I'm creating this stuff. The ad revenue is separate. This is how a lot of like your cover music and things like that on YouTube don't get obliterated by these cease and desist orders, because the product is not what you're selling. Okay. You're not selling the video's contents. You're getting ad revenue from those video content, which means you are not selling the product that people are looking at. You are selling the time that they invest in that, and that's it. Now, there are cease and desist orders that have to deal with copyright things, where you're just one-to-one copy pasting people's footage. That's a problem, right? And then the non-transformative kind, where you're just taking episodes of Super Sentai and uploading them to YouTube, that's wrong. That's wrong. It's helpful for you and me that want to watch that stuff, but it's wrong. It needs to be transformative unless it's brought from an official source. That's how it's supposed to work, okay? So just make your own shows. I made my own Star Trek the other day. Just do it. Just do it. It doesn't matter. Okay? It's not like you're going to go out there and try to turn it into something that competes with the official release. It's just getting to the point now where we don't need him anymore. We just don't need him. You know, it's useless to try and go out here and say, oh, well, I'm excited about this show, when you can just make it yourself in 10 minutes, you know? It just doesn't matter. A lot of people hate Haim Saban for his various. Yes, Mr. Saban has definitely incurred quite a bit of wrath over the years. Some of it may be deserved. I myself, I don't hate the guy, just same as I don't hate Shuki Levy. I just think that they're guys that, you know, have their own agenda, and that agenda sometimes gets confused for the product that they made. And we have to remember that Haim Saban and Shuki Levy are not Power Rangers. They're not like Walt Disney, where they lived and breathed that. They made a show. It was very successful. They tried to make the most money on it possible. That was it. It's not something that like lives in their heart. You know, it's one of the hard things to accept about the people that make these shows is that this is just another thing in their library. It's not the defining thing, the shining pinnacle thing that we are, you know, that you and I view it as, you know, this very special, childhood informative thing, that comfort food of television, if you will. It's not how they register it. It's just another thing that they created, and it's neat to look at, made a lot of money, but largely it's just another lug nut on the wheel. So like Lucas, they sold off their creations. Yeah, Disney picked it up in the early 2000s. I want to say it was like 06, 07. May have been earlier than that. May have been 03. Maybe it was 03. Disney picked up Power Rangers like during the production of Wild Force. So they helped complete Wild Force and then right into Ninja Storm. Ninja Storm was their first official release of it. And then Disney ran out of steam with it. Apparently, they were trying to kill it the whole time they owned it. I have no idea. Apparently, the violence is still too hard for them to negotiate. But Power Rangers then got passed back to Saban through, I assume Saban won a poker deal and, Michael Eisner just gave it back to settle the poker deal. But it went downhill from there because Saban tried to force it to be the 1993 show again, and it just couldn't do that anymore. The attitude of the show had matured beyond 5 teenagers with attitude having to deal with a space threat. It had matured to a point where, RPM, as I mentioned earlier, the Power Rangers RPM, they opened up with the Terminator. The entirety of the human populace had been reduced by machines to the level of which it only fit inside, like all of humanity, the surviving humans lived inside one city, one domed city. And the machines had carried out such destruction that the planet had gone through complete ecological collapse. Several characters on screen are shown dying in that one. And Disney sold that back to Chaim Saban. He was like, whoops, we're going back to pies in the face and fart jokes, everybody. And that had the predictable effect on the market. So sort of like what happened with Lucas selling to Disney, and Disney just simply didn't understand the poetry of Star Wars. They just saw the money, and we just need lightsabers and a guy with a breathing problem. And we're all set, guys. If we get a guy with a breathing problem and some lightsabers, they will give us all the money. Yeah. Unsupported Power Rangers will continue Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. Yeah, that's already happened. You can go, Sagittarius Seiya, you can go all over YouTube and find people that are using the same method that I have to create their own custom teams. I created Power Rangers Star Corps Storm, and that's just Ginga Man with a couple more Godzilla Earth layers added to it, It's not that hard to make your own team with the AI allowing you to merge different sources together into a new look. The thing that's difficult, in my opinion, about it is following that up to create an actual production out of it, as opposed to just a neat opening like what I did here. And again, if you guys want to see more of the Starstrikers, let me know. And when I'm done with Hollow Earth, I will add them to the pile of things I need to get started on making a full episode of, which will, take the time that it does. But again, I'm not trying to slap something together to get clicks. I'm trying to put something together that demonstrates that I actually care about all this stuff and that I'm trying to make it work better than what was actually officially delivered. Because I know Hasbro and Neo-Saban, anybody that would have any legal right to come out and stick a finger in my eye about this, can't touch the Gokaiger footage. Because they're not going to use it. They can't use it. The brand demands that they can't interact with pirates, so I don't have to worry about it. If you go and try to do like Mighty Morphin like I have, I've been very, very transformative about it. There's only a few things that are connected through like that theme song and the names. But a lot of it, even the Megazord, I changed because I wanted to make sure that it was very expressed that this was not being offered by Hasbro or anybody else. I made toys that looked like they were from Hasbro, obviously, but that was moreover to create that illusion of supporting media to this, to give this Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth a more tangible impact for those Mighty Morphin fans that feel, I wouldn't say robbed, but just sort of not given what they wanted. So, but that's the end of that for today. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you guys hanging around and having fun with me talking about this. I do want to continue telling the story of Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth. So that'll get done. And of course, it leads to Evil Tommy and whatnot. But now you know. So expect to see Drakkon full burn. That's the armor that you're looking at here. This is Drakkon full burn. Whatever reason that won't load. That's neat. My file can't be accessed. You gotta love it. But this is Drakkon full burn in the full armor, and I like the name, Lord Drakkon full burn, and that's what the name of that armor is. So expect to see that in the end, or maybe in a like an epilogue as part of Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Save the Hollow Earth, and because I like what I made, I'm just going to play the intro as the outro. So if you don't like it, too bad. If you do like it, make sure you hit like and subscribe if you're new. And let me know if you want to see more of the Starstrikers. Until next time, guys, I hope you have a good weekend. And as always, good luck out there.
Got any fives?
Tell me you love me in the comments.
You could say please, you know.